Yo, yo. Stream is starting in a moment. I'm just getting some water, getting set up. But, yeah, I'll be there in a minute. Truth. Oh, did she now? She did you a wide dragon head. What's that? What's that referencing exactly? I think we should be good. All right. What's up, people? Trying to get this up so I can actually see it properly. Okay, there we go. All right. So, welcome. So, this is going to be the first of many. So, I've gone through, started making tier lists on Tier Maker. Yo, is that? Yeah, it is. All right. So, this is how this is going to go. Notice that it's not S to F tier. It's peak, memorable, inoffensive, underwhelming, mistake. The way this tiering is going to work is I am rating the cards based on their card design. This is not how powerful they are. This is not how meta they were. This is just... No. Draco, we're not actually going to be ranking the normal monsters in the way that you think. Most of these are just going to go straight into mistake. Now, it doesn't literally mean that normal monsters have no use, okay? But I included everything in case anyone else stumbles upon tiermaker.com and wanted to rate these cards. But yes, mistake, Kenzie. So understand my mentality here, okay? This is an interpretation. This is not objectively correct or anything like that. The way that I'm doing this is I care about how much does this card actually create interesting gameplay, right? That's what I care about. So you'll kind of see the order we're doing this as we go along and like what my approach to this is. Man-Eater is the most interesting gameplay yet. Yeah, we'll get there. We'll get there. So, hold on. Let me quickly... I keep forgetting to turn this back on. Boom. There we go. A man could have been eaten, and it makes one question why a man-eater exists if also exists a man-eater bug. Philosophy 101. Yeah. Okay. And that's the other thing. Enchanting Mermaid is interesting to me. So we'll clear this up too. There can be memorable cards that are not necessarily good cards. I don't mean literally, oh, the Blue Eyes White Dragon, that's memorable, so it should go memorable. That's not what this means. This is memorable in terms of card design, in terms of the gameplay it creates and facilitates. I hope that makes sense. So once you get adjusted to my nomenclature here and the way that I'm rating this stuff, you'll follow along. Sandstone is in the Sacred Cards GBA. Yeah, I think a lot of these cards are, bud. Was a starting monster? Okay, I don't know about that. I didn't play Sacred Cards. All right, so we're just going to dip our toes in, and we're going to start with the normal monsters. So, very off the bat, you are going to see a trend here. I am putting almost all of these in mistake, and we're going to get to the ones that maybe should be considered not a mistake. I know Skull Servant has synergy later. I know. I'm aware of these things. Just hold on. This is an interpretation, okay? Boom, boom, boom. This is going to be a trend in 2002. Because 2002 is prominently known for having a lot of cards that are not very useful. Just pack filler. Even the fusion materials don't really get to see a lot of use. So it's going to take me a second. Boom, boom, boom. You can make arguments for if some of these cards have usefulness or are targets for combos later on in the game. That's fine. Those can exist. So we're just getting this out of the way now. Okay. Put Red Skullbird in memorable because of progression series. See, okay. We're getting there. We're getting there. Not in Warrior number 2. So, the way this is going to work for the rest of these, notice that these monsters are not. There are some normal monsters I didn't put up there. Skull Red Bird, Uruby, and I think there's something else I actually put in here that could be considered for this. These are actually a part of the LOB meta, as it were. But, I'll clarify for my purposes here. They are not going to be considered in underwhelming. They are 1550 and 1500, which were relevant for a total of 2 weeks before Starter Deck Yugi and Kaiba came out. And from that point onwards, 1700, 1800, 1900, and 2000 in GX, when we got there, would become the threshold for meaningful attack point amounts. So I don't think that their little stint of importance here is significant enough. Relevant total 2 weeks till Starter Deck Vagabond came out. Yeah, Starter Deck Vagabond, the most powerful Starter Deck to ever be released. But yeah, Skull Red Bird, Uruby, I'm giving them an honorable mention here. In fact, I'll even put them at the top of mistake, okay? But they're still a mistake. Now, Dark Magician is weird. I think just for iconicity, I'm going to be a little bit biased and put it in underwhelming. There's probably something you can do with this for some sort of strategy that doesn't involve dragons, because you can't dragon capture jar it, I guess. So I'm going to put it as the best 2 tribute that's not a dragon into underwhelming. You should put this tier list in the mistake category. Sure, man. So the dragons here, Cursor Dragon, Trihorn, Red Eyes Black Dragon, and Blue Eyes White Dragon, they're all dragon types. They all synergize with the Flute of Summoning Dragon that would come out in the starter deck. I'm not going to be doing a ton of consideration like this for a lot of cards because mostly I want to consider cards of their own merit and not based on other stuff. But even if we're doing that, Curse of Dragon is an okay tribute monster. Trihorn and Blue Eyes are the strongest 2 tributes you can use at this time. And Red Eyes is kind of bad. Red Eyes, honestly, you could argue being put in a mistake, but yeah, no card exists in a vacuum. You are correct. No card exists in a vacuum. You always have to consider it in the context of a duel in a deck. Yes and no. I agree with you on premise, but the thing about the way that I'm tiering this, and again, this will become more obvious as I'm getting into the cards that have actual effects. I'm really think Fluid of Summoning Dragon combos. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Um, wait, are you on YouTube? Why is it not showing? Okay, yeah, you are on YouTube. Okay, good. My chat was being weird yesterday and not showing people on YouTube consistently. That was really annoying. Hmm. So, yeah, man. So I'm just for shorthand right now. I'm gonna put all these guys in underwhelming because you can at least do something with them. They have some sort of use. They're powerful 2 tributes. Uh, there's some combos you can do with them. Curse of Dragon is somewhat useful in that way. Yeah, you're on YouTube. Okay. Um, I also think all the 2K defenders go into underwhelming for the same reason. I think that they have uses that very clearly, and 2K defense ends up 2K defense is good in now in 2025. It's still like it's just a stat that hasn't really been crept super hard. Curse of Dragon can't be targeted by Gen Alpha kids because kids these days can't even read cursive. Cursive Dragon, sure, man. Curses of Fusion, not a good one, but still, yeah. There's something you can point out there. So these cards have a little bit of noteworthiness. Exodia, this is a little tricky. I'm probably gonna put Exodia in. I'm gonna be generous. I think you could put them in inoffensive or memorable. And Chad, if you have opinions on this, go ahead and share them. I'll consider them. Why nobody plays Exodia? I think Exodia can go in memorable. I think Exodia, obviously people do remember it for being Exodia, but beyond that, it creates a gameplay style that is unlike anything else in the game. I don't think it's peak Yu-Gi-Oh! By any stretch of the imagination. I think a lot of boring Exodia decks exist. They sort of plague Yu-Gi-Oh!'s existence at times. Like just, stalling out, you watch your opponent combo for a million years, but there are interesting Exodia decks that have existed. And there is thoughtfulness that goes into deck building for Exodia decks. So I'll put those in memorable. So now we have the 4 effect monsters that exist in this pack. Reaper of the Cards, I'm gonna put into inoffensive, actually. It's power crept, but just on card design for effect Chads, yeah. Just on card design, Reaper of the Cards is a tribute monster that you can set face down, has enough defense to not be run over automatically, and it can pop a trap card. It actually sees play in Yugi Kaiba format with Soul Exchange. It does something, and on its own is not a completely useless card. So I will put it in inoffensive, but I am being charitable. I think you could argue it being underwhelming as well. It's not a mistake entirely, but I'll put it in inoffensive. Hane, kind of a similar deal. I think it does something. It creates a tempo situation, but it's whatever. I'm being charitable, but am I being graceful? I'd like to think I'm a pretty graceful guy. Maneater Bug, I think goes in memorable. Everyone remembers Maneater Bug, but from a gameplay perspective, right? It showed up in the anime like in 1 episode. That's not what people remember this card. People remember this card because it was annoying. It actually affected the duel in a meaningful way. I don't think it's peak. I think that the effect is far too simple with too little nuance to really be that significant, but I think it's memorable. And Arm Ninja, I'm going to put this in inoffensive as well. It's cool to have a flip effect that pops a spell. The problem with Arm Ninja in this time period is that there wasn't really anything to pop except Swords of Revealing Light, which is something, but there's just too little instances where the effect goes off. But I don't want that to work too hard against the card design itself. The environment in which a card was printed does not necessarily mean that it can't have use in a more well-constructed environment. People sometimes set spells out of fear of card destruction. That's a good point. Yeah, there is nuance to it. There are situations. Sometimes people set Heavy Storm in later formats to outplay opponents to make them, commit to their setting, and then they flip it over. There are instances where Arm Ninja could come up. It's there. So the fusions, I mean, I think just in terms of stat points to have a payoff of some kind, I can put Gaia the Dragon Champion in underwhelming. I think the rest of them just kind of go in mistake. I understand instant fusion and ready fusion exist. Evaluating those cards when we get to them, sure. Anything under level 6 can be summoned by a fusion card. It can, it has usefulness, but looking at those cards on their own, they don't do anything. I don't really care about that. Without instant fusion or ready fusion existing, these cards don't do anything. That is my focus on this, right? Like, at least with the cards like Curse of Dragon, Trihorn, Red Eyes, Blue Eyes, they're better with Flute of Summoning Dragon, but you can still play them as cards that do something, right? So that's sort of my logic there. Oh, this is like 2002 if you were a pro player tier list? Not necessarily. No. This is more like if you are, I don't know. I think just zoomed out, looking at Yu-Gi-Oh! And looking at the card design of cards individually. You were right about the vacuum thing. You're right to point that out. I think that's a really good point. But I think that we do need to be able to look at cards individually. Like if you make a cube, if you make a draft, right? And every individual card that you put in that draft does something, right? Without any other card in being involved. That's awesome. Now you apply that you don't play cards in a vacuum and you can focus on combos. But if you draft a card on its own, it still does something for your deck. That's what I'm looking at. If you were to draft the cards in inoffensive, they'd be useful. If you were to draft them in memorable, it's towards something, right? Exodia, I'm giving a little bit more credit because it's a very unique situation that's unlike most other cards where you need 5 of them. But yeah. This is like if you didn't watch the anime, just play TCG. I think a cube with these monsters, as only the monsters would be cool as fuck, but you'd have to build around the cube around that power card. Yes, you would. There is a lower level cube that you could build with these cards, but I don't even really care about power level. I just care about the impact the cards make. And that's why I am considering stats to a degree, right? Yu-Gi-Oh! Sort of dictates that, like, there are certain stat points you hit, and that's what good cards are, right? So I think that acknowledging that is good. But you could make a cube or a draft around anything, right? You could make it that King Fog is the high stat point you're reaching and only using cards underneath of it. But if you were to word it that way, then there's not a point ranking anything, because then anything can be good if you build around it, which is cool. That's a cool thing you can do. But I'm sort of taking into context the way Yu-Gi-Oh! Was actually designed, right? So yeah, all the fusion monsters are going to go into mistake except for the high statted one that also uses monsters you could sort of justify playing. I think Metal Dragon in LOB format does actually see a little bit of play, but that's very specific. Okay. I think the key thing is the tier list focuses on the tournament grinder mindset. Yeah, there's a little bit of that. If this is cards ranked based on if you were trying to win, I would say so. There's an element to that, but you will see exceptions to this. There are cards that I think are worth listing as memorable or peak based on how good they are in an environment designed around them. But it's tricky. You have to be careful about that sort of thought process. So we'll get to that with cards that are more detailed, cards that do more or create interesting situations, and none of that really exists in LOB. So, all right. So Raigeki. So this is an interaction that's going to kind of summarize how I feel about a lot of cards generally. So Raigeki. I think Raigeki is in memorable. Raigeki is a card with a very, very high impact the moment you play it. It makes you not commit to the field as much when you can help it. But it's also a very swingy card. If you play this, the duel can just be, you could be losing really hard and suddenly you win a game just because you top deck Raigeki. And there aren't a lot of cases where you hold it back. There are some. There's not like it's a completely thoughtless card, but there are a lot of situations where you don't need to think about playing Raigeki. You just play it, and you're good. However, I think Dark Hole is actually peak Yu-Gi-Oh! Design. I think the simple change of it hitting both players' fields instead of just your opponent's makes you think a lot more when playing it. You also get to do combos where you destroy your own cards in certain situations where it works out. And that extra layer of thought changes things completely. So, in my opinion, this is the beginning of the distinctions you're going to start seeing. You'd think that if I was doing it by power level, Raigeki would be peak, Dark Hole would be memorable, but it's the other way around for me. Excuse me. So, on that note, Pot of Greed, I'm going to put Pot of Greed. It's a little tricky. You get the tier list now? Yeah. I told you, like, it's going to be hard to tell when I'm at the beginning. But once you start seeing stuff like this, it really is about card design. The impact cards have on the game from a purely robotic, functional perspective. Yes. Yes, exactly. Exactly. I think Pot of Greed is either memorable or inoffensive. I'd love to hear chat's thoughts on this, but the argument here is Pot of Greed, it is interesting. It feels good to play as a player, but sometimes it feels like you're cheating a little bit and you're just getting out. The thing that makes Pot of Greed really good is its interaction with other cards like Magician of Faith. It's good for the game before 2006. But here's the thing, Kenzie. I'm going to be rating cards from a lot of years of Yu-Gi-Oh! A lot. If we're only looking within 2002 and we're not considering anything from any other time period, then yeah, Pot of Greed would be memorable because it's not that crazy. But this card, I don't know. We'll get there. Keep in mind, a lot of cards that are broken and spam other cards and break them past their original intent, they might end up being in mistake purely because they don't help the game function. Besides Pot of Desires exist, draw 2 isn't that offensive. Pot of Greed is easily memorable. I can be persuaded on that. Right, that's not a card design thing necessarily. Okay, actually it is. I think the feeling of draw 2 is so important that it should go memorable. I can agree with that. It's not peak because it's not that nuanced, but it is a feel-good card. I will put it in memorable. That's fine. Yeah. Monster Reborn. So Monster Reborn, it's inoffensive or memorable. Literally, for Pot of... I disagree with Pot of Greed being peak. Reborn's peak. I think the fact that Reborn can bring stuffing back from either graveyard makes it one of the most anime cards in existence, right? Like Monster Reborn when you're losing, like think about this, right? Think about this comparatively. You have Raigeki, anime effects for sure, yeah. You have Raigeki. If you draw Raigeki and you turn the dual arm Raigeki, it's almost deflating, right? You use that on your opponent, and they're like, "Oh, damn, I lost to Raigeki." That was so swingy. If they lose to Monster Reborn, it's like, whoa! It feels so different because like you're having the monster that you're bringing back end the game. It's like a personality thing, right? It's swinging in a very interesting way, and they still have all the room in the world to like get rid of the monster before you attack. It relies on setup to already exist. You can't just rip it instantly. You have to already have played a game. Yep, like you said, doesn't swing a game, just pushes towards a player. I completely agree. Yep. I could see arguments for Monster Reborn being memorable or inoffensive, but I think peak does work for it. I think that's fine. I think simple effects that aren't very imaginative have this weird room to where like they could be very just rigid in their use, or they can be very interesting. And yeah, Dark Hole, Monster Reborn, the fact that they affect both players, I think adds that extra cushion of intrigue. Fissure, I think it's memorable probably. It's inoffensive or memorable. I think Fissure, the fact that you have to use it, memorable. It's the fact that you have to use it on their weakest monster, right? I think that's a really big part of it. It has a condition you have to meet. Removal is strongly balanced. I think that works. Yeah, I think I'd agree with that. Swords is peak. Swords is peak Yu-Gi-Oh! Card design. Swords stops for 3 turns, and it flips up monsters. It stays on the field, so there's so many ways you can interact with this card. Like this is probably the most in-depth... I would put it at the top of peak and LOB. Honestly. Yep. Floodgates with built-in self-destruct. They special pure MST. Yep. Swords, it's so thoughtful. It does so many different things, and yeah, it's just a good card. I don't know. like, it's pretty self-explanatory, I think. Compare swords to literally any other card in this list so far. It does so many different thought games. So yeah. Um, I'm gonna put remove trap in inoffensive. You can build around this. You could probably create an environment where remove trap is actually a very good card, but it relies too much on the format that you're building to work with it. From a card design perspective, I think it's inoffensive. I wouldn't say underwhelming, because remove trap at least facilitate, like put it this way. Let's say you build a cube and you're using a bunch of continuous traps in the cube, right? Remove trap basically serves as a hyper specific MST, right? Like, there is a situation you can see remove trap having a function, but in the environment, like, it's sort of like it with Arm Ninja. Arm Ninja isn't just good on its own. You need an environment for it to work. Yeah, before you get actual removal, it's like a little bit of a spoiler. MST is peak. MST is a peak Yu-Gi-Oh card. This is 2 tiers down from MST. That's a pretty big drop. So, what cards are using it against in 2002 during Kipstar? So, you are correct. It's really, really bad in pretty much any point in Yu-Gi-Oh's history. This isn't about how good Remove Trap is as a card. It's that you can envision an environment where Remove Trap is good, right? Like, as a card on its own. If you look at and feel free to argue with me. Feel free to push back on this if you think I'm giving it too much credit. But, like, if you build a draft or cube environment where Remove Trap is useful, you can choose to put Remove Trap in instead of MST, instead of Twin Twisters. There's lots of cards that you can basically replace Remove Trap with Remove Trap, and it would still work. And I think that speaks to Remove Trap's usability as a card. Yeah, I'm talking about the impact of card design itself, not necessarily its meta relevance. Exactly. So I think Remove Trap has usefulness. Like, let me show you what I mean. If I move it to underwhelming, Remove Trap makes an impact on the game that is more than just summon and attack, right? This actually can remove a card on the field via an effect in some way. But if it exists in any historical Yu-Gi-Oh format, this card doesn't do anything, especially since by the time Remove Trap had more targets, like you think like Wall of Revealing Light, you think Gravity Bind, right? We had MST by this point. There's no reason to use Remove Trap. We had MST. We had Dust Tornado. So it didn't get an opportunity to see any use whatsoever. So that's what I think. Should be higher than Ninja. It's more likely to be used than Ninja. I'm not going to get too pressed on ranking the individual tiers. I made a point with swords, but I'm going to keep this tier kind of like this way right now. So, all right. We got Stop Defense. I think Stop Defense is also an inoffensive card. I would put this in inoffensive instead of underwhelming, and there is a reason for this. Dragon capture card in mistake. Draco. Is that just because your name's Draco and you hate being put in defense mode? So Stop Defense. I have found this card to be useful specifically when I play Nightmare Troubadour, and you're actually going to see I'm going to be doing a Nuzlocke of Nightmare Troubadour probably next week is when I'm going to start doing it. And Stop Defense is really, really, really good in the I don't want to be stuck horizontally. All right, I got you, man. Stop Defense is really good early game for getting in extra damage and closing out duels. Opponents are setting monsters face down and they don't have a lot of wiggle room to do anything, and you're just stuck attacking defensive monsters every turn. Stop Defense is a way to facilitate actually getting damage when you can't normally. Now, that's about the only thing good about it. I don't really know what other use case it has. Actually, talking about it out loud, actually, no. I think it is underwhelming, now that I think about it. That's the only way it's useful that I can think of, getting the defense in. And you really, really have to build around that for that to be useful outside of that situation. Because you're rushing against really dumb opponents in Nightmare Troubadour. So, never mind. I'll put it in underwhelming. I don't know. Let me check, actually. Let's check stop defense to see if it can force flip effects. Sorry for the flashbang. Yes, it does force flip effects. It does. It selects a defensive monster on your opponent's side of the field and changes to attack mode. Counter flips. Then maybe it's an offensive then. What do you all think? You think it offensive? It's kind of like a weird Book of Taiyu, which I also would put in inoffensive. Okay, I'll put it in inoffensive. Gravedigger Ghoul. I'm gonna be real. I think Gravedigger Ghoul is actually underwhelming. I understand that it gets rid of cards in the graveyard permanently for the rest of the duel, and you have no way to get them back. The problem I have with it is... Oh, Gravedigger Ghoul. Gravedigger Ghoul is like soul release, but only for 2 cards and only for your opponent's graveyard. Yeah, it's spell speed 1 DD Crow. The problem with it is, I don't think in most cases it's worth it. Like, at best, this is stopping Monster Reborn preemptively. If they have like a Summoned Skull or Blue Eyes in the graveyard, they can't Monster Reborn it anymore. But in a format like that, where you really don't have that much monster variety, you're going to have other good targets to bring back. It's really... And you're playing a card to do it? I don't know. It's something that would have seemed good in board meeting, but not in a real duel. Yeah, I completely agree. I think Gravedigger Ghoul is whatever. Poly, I'm going to say underwhelming just because of how much it takes up. It does something very unique. Fusion summoning is good. There are lots of ways to search it, but you have to use so many resources to do it. It's not peak. Poly's not peak. I don't agree with that. I love Poly. Very nostalgic card. Love using it. I love the amount of ways you can search it out. On its own, no. All right, now we get to go into Mistake again. Goblin's Secret Remedy, Red Medicine, Sparks, Final Flame, Hinatama. All of this stuff, bad life point change. Bad life point change. I'm also going to go ahead and say, yeah, I understand. No, you are not. you are memeing. You are memeing. And I feel pretty similarly about a lot of these other cards here. I think you could argue that the field spells making stat changes are cool and important. The problem is they're not enough points to really matter. They matter for such a small amount of time. I don't even... because we get upgrades to all of these cards in 2 sets. So I don't even really want to entertain the idea that these cards matter in a meaningful way. They were good. They were so good Kaiba banned them in Duelist City. Wait, is that a thing? Did Kaiba ban burn damage? I don't even remember that. But yeah, all of this is going in Mistake. I think the equipped spells and the field spells are just not... They're not good enough. Yeah, I didn't remember that part about Battle City rules. Boom, boom. So LOB is the least interesting of a lot of these, just because I think so much of this pack is nothing, right? But that's... everyone knows that. Umi, okay, Draco, I respect it. I respect putting Umi memorable. No, because we get a Legendary Ocean later, and I think that is the one that always sees use. Umi is the card of all the Umis you will never consider for any reason. The Dark Equipment in Weasel, though. So the problem with Yami increasing the power of like Fiends and Spellcasters is Fiends and Spellcasters are the most powerful cards in the format. La Jin, Neo, the Magic Warrior, all that stuff. That is powerful to... you're boosting your opponent's monsters. So, it can swing a game. It can. The only one of these field spells that really works that way is Wasteland. But remember, that's considering meta. That's considering what was good in the LOB and started at Yugi Kaiba format, right? I'm not considering that. In the grand scheme of things, these cards are very, very hyper-specific, and their boost is so small compared to the standard we have for boosts in Yu-Gi-Oh! That I don't think they're worth mentioning. The equip spells? The equip spells are better. The equip spells are... You know what? Hold on. I think I could justify, like... The ones that do up 400, down 200, maybe. Maybe. But I don't know. We get Acts of Despair in like 2 sets. I don't know. And I understand that, like, I defended Remove Trap because MST, but I guess. Let me think about it. I could put the equip spells in memorable. Or no, not memorable. Oh my god, no. Underwhelming. I could put them in underwhelming. Let me read these. 300, 300. What are the 400, 200 ones? Are any of those in here? I don't know if they are. No, they're not. Yeah, you're right. The attack shift is significant. It does something. The thing is, though, we have to acknowledge we're being very lenient on this in LOB, because as we go through the game and we really consider the magnitude of how cards work in the totality of the game, this is not a hill that I'm going to be as generous on, I don't think. But I guess I could put them into underwhelming. Yeah, I'll go ahead and do that. The fields, I think the field spells being reciprocal is why I won't consider them in underwhelming. Well, we're just starting with English LB, so really just do whatever. The fake percent of the game. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we get the more meaningful stuff in a bit. Whoa there. Move that up here. And I think what you're saying about the principle of this, it's actually kind of similar where I think like Acts of Despair would only be a tier up, right? It's just a boost with like a really meaningless revival or recursion effect. Beat boop. Yeah, screw off. Yeah. Okay. Now finally, Trap Hole. Trap Hole, I think, is very memorable. I don't think it's peak, but Trap Hole does create. Thank you, Kenzie. Trap Hole's memorable. You're gonna have to make your argument for peak. I don't know if I'm on peak train. I think it's memorable. I think that Trap Hole does create a really, really, really good dynamic. It makes you think about when you're normal summoning and stuff. That whole concept is really good. But I think that the actual nuance of what it does on an individual activation is pretty limited. Like Monster Reborn, Dark Hole, and Swords have insane ramifications whenever you play them. Trap Hole does. In fact, I would put it like pretty high on memorable for just how good it is, but it is the closest to being peak of anything in memorable. I will say that. It's the closest, but not entirely sold. I'll give you your moment to talk about Trap Hole. Oh, you had a meme. Okay. But yeah, it's somewhere in here. I think it's memorable. Someone was holding their hand to his, so they were making a heart together. That's what. All right. Dragon Capture Jar. Okay, Draco. You asked for this to be put in mistake. I think just because the card is a little bit interesting, I think it's underwhelming. Realistically, I think it's underwhelming. I think some floodgates are flat out mistakes. And ironically, I don't think the floodgate mistake is necessarily a mistake. I think that one's actually kind of okay. But Dragon Capture Jar, I could see an environment where this is kind of funny. Like you could build like a cube where all the strongest cards are dragons and then the other monsters aren't as strong, but Dragon Capture Jar is in the format, so they have to deal with that, right? It's kind of actually like how it was in real life. So, yeah, I would, yeah, so English LOB, exactly. So I'd put it underwhelming. I think two-pronged attack, however, is a mistake, flat out. I think two-pronged attack, there is an interesting conversation about like, oh, if you can get enough resources and spend them, yeah, the investment's just not interesting. You feel bad every time you play this card. You only ever play it when you have nothing better. And there's so much better in Yugi you could be having fun with. Yeah, like you could build around this card, but it's just, yeah. So, there we go. I'm going to go ahead and save this. This is my tiering. Go ahead and download that too. Hold on. And I will save it as well. So that can be seen on my profile in there now. Call it Miles' cool tier list epic? Sure. Yeah. All right. So that's LOB. We got that one in. Did you know that Yu-Gi-Oh? True. So you can see it here. I wish there was a share on Blue Sky option. I don't use Twitter anymore. All right. So everything a mistake. Who cares? This part upwards is the interesting part. And I think the only cards you really truly are discussing generally are going to be memorable upwards, and inoffensive get kind of an afterthought mention. But we're going to get to some more interesting packs now. They're going to require a little bit more thought. All right. Next. So we're going to do a little pit stop here. We have Yugi Kaiba. So I'm only really going to mention the cards that are new to this because there are a lot of repeats in here. And some of them are in other packs later. We might just repeat our logic in those or something. But we can start off pretty immediately. Let's look at the cards that we already talked about, right? Oh, I put uninteresting instead of underwhelming here. I didn't mean to do that. All right, whatever. I'll fix that later. So, Blue Eyes, Dark Magician, Gaia, all that's in uninteresting. Curse of Dragon. And I'm going to go ahead and put, because Curse of Dragon is a dragon, and it also has synergy with other cards in some capacity, can be used realistically. I'll probably keep it in uninteresting. Summon Skull goes in inoffensive. And I'm going to start putting everything else in just mistake, basically. Gyakuten and Megami hitting some sort of threshold and working with Soul Exchange is kind of worth mentioning, I guess, but I don't know. I'll put Judgment in uninteresting too. It's a little stronger. Now, let's look at the other guys. Skull Red Bird. They go to high mistake, but they're still mistake for the same reasons we said earlier. I'm also going to put Great White and Man-Eating Treasure Chest in mistake, even though they're the next ones up. Yeah, Ryukishin, Pale Beast, all this stuff. Mistake. Boom, 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 boom. Okay. Ryukishin Power was the first you ever owned? Cool. Alright. An older kid gave it to me in first grade and said it could beat a Blue Eyes if I just gave it 2 Acts of Despairs. He wasn't wrong. It's the ultimate combo. There's a meme, I don't know if you've seen it, but it's like the ultimate combo in Yu-Gi-Oh! Is Raigeki plus Silver Fang. Alright. So, for this next part, La Jin goes in uninteresting. Battle Ox, Neo the Magic Swordsman, Giant Soldier of Stone, Mystical Elf. The high statted monsters that are useful, but are not... Actually, hold on. So I'm giving Summon Skull too much credit. It is also in uninteresting. I had that combo card. Yeah. These are all in uninteresting. Having high stats and not doing anything else puts you in uninteresting. Summon Skull he's a boss. I own plenty of him, but he's uninteresting. He did define stat lines for the rest of Yu-Gi-Oh! But so did the 2000 Defender. So did Blue Eyes with 3000 attack, right? All these are pretty defining stats. My girl summoned me some Skull. I haven't heard that one before. All right. So we're gonna go ahead and put. So I think Lord of D also goes in uninteresting. Um. So this is why I think Lord of D having blanket protection for dragons. There's a level of intrigue there, but it's just I don't know. I think it's too uninvolved. It like the blanket protection is just there. It's yes, I agree with that. I agree that the card design there is smart. The problem I have with it is when you play it, I don't really think how should I put it? I see what you're saying. It means the way you remove it is playing the game. I see what you mean. My problem is there are plenty of times where Lord of D doesn't do anything, right? If you play swords, it is doing something no matter what. It is buying you 3 turns. It will flip cards. Lord of D is a passive card. And it's kind of my problem. It's the cost of playing Lord of D, but that means that it's not guaranteed to be an interesting play. I think that the cards, like if we look at the LOB tier list, the cards that I have in peak, they do something every time they're played. I don't think Lord of D does something every time it's played. It's passive. All right. You're swaying me on moving it up to inoffensive because it at least does something. It creates a dynamic by being on the field. Um, yeah, I see what you're saying. I think it could still be uninteresting, but I'll put it. It's fine. It's inoffensive. Um, you almost always see it do something in a deck that's tuned. Okay, okay, I'll give it that. I guess in a sense that like if they have a field full of dragons, you can't wait to get rid of them. It will do. We would. Yeah, it did create Melody Awakening Dragon. There's legacy there. There's yeah, Wall's not peak. I disagree with Wall being peak. It's memorable for sure. It's really high up. I do really like Wall, Jujitsu Master, and I like that they sort of this and Man Eater Bug kind of like paved the way for Snowman Eater later on, right? Yeah, no, Wall of Illusions might probably my favorite card in this format. I agree with you. It is really, really good. I just think from game design perspective, it's fine. I think like not fine, not even fine. It's really good. That's why it's memorable. It's really good. Like this is probably one of the most interesting cards in this format. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I think it's about where it is. Um, you play Dictator D and Master Duel? Very nice. Um, okay. Trap Master. So just because of the way Yu-Gi-Oh is built, most of the time you're not setting spell cards, right? That instantly just mechanically in Yu-Gi-Oh puts Trap Master in my mind more into memorable tier than inoffensive like Arm Ninja, right? I love that Trap Master. You get the whole thing of you flip it up, get rid of a trap hole or mirror force your opponent has, and then tribute it for a summon skull, right? I really just like the nuance to when you flip it up, how you play it, all that stuff. It feels way more involved than Arm Ninja. I mean, you can do flip Arm Ninja, get rid of the swords, and then summon it, and it feels the same, but Yu-Gi-Oh! Is just not built in a way where that happens nearly as much. Even if you design, like, you could design a cube around it, like you could for, like, remove trap, but there's a reason why I put remove trap in inoffensive, right? I didn't put it in the same place as memorable because you could finagle that situation. Trapmaster more naturally fits into this sort of play style. Yeah. So memorable for me. Hain again, we already talked about it. It's an inoffensive. The Stern Mystic, I don't care. This is basically a normal monster. I don't care about looking at a face down card my opponent has. It's dumb. Um uh Hane Hane. Does it matter? I don't know if it matters. How do you know it's Hane Hane, by the way? Hmm. Also, sorry for going nonstop, everybody. I've been talking since we started this. I just wanted to kind of get through it. But thank you for stopping by and watching so far. This has been really fun so far. Um, I'm they don't have it's Japanese. I guess so. Yeah, all right, fine. Hane Hane, not Hane Hane. Hane Hane. All right. All right. So I need someone's input here. What does the mysterious puppeteer do? I keep forgetting how this card works. I think it's in Starter Deck Yugi, not Kaiba. I might be misremembering though. No, it's in Kaiba. I wish it wouldn't do that flashing. I need to do it like this. What does it make the tier list page look like? Gross. Oh, wait, no, that's it on. Never mind. Okay. He puppeteers mysteriously. Okay. Each time your opponent normals or flips a monster, increase your life points by 500. Oh, so it's like a floodgate type thing where, like, on each summon, yeah. So that's fine. I think that's probably just because it's so easy to run over, it's not realistically going to happen very much. I'm going to put it probably like an uninteresting. Like, to be an inoffensive, it would need to do something. Yeah, floodgate, exactly. It's kind of whatever. Wicked Worm Beast, I'm gonna put an inoffensive. There's gameplay around this, but I don't think it's the most interesting of gameplay. The original text of Mysterious Puppeteer was horrendous. Hold on, can we let's find that real quick. Give me a moment. Larry, let's look at this. As long as this card remains face up on the field, the life points of this card's controller increase by 500 points for each additional monster summoned. Excluding special summon, but including your opponent's monsters. So it doesn't even count special? Wait, does it say that on the new version? It is normal or flip. Okay. That's wild. Yeah, wow. Uh, how are we rating these power level for the time? Hey, what's up, Jesse? So, the way we're doing this, I'll show you the LOB tier list so you can get an idea, right? Oh, I'm on there right now, actually. So, this is by card design. This is not by its meta relevance. It's not by power level necessarily. It is how interesting are the games, right? So, for example, I put Dark Hole above Raigeki because at least this is sort of 1v1 minded. It can apply to domain as well. I was considering having a domain aspect to this, but then I saw Crystal Crystal Domain. Wait, no. I'm misremembering the name. Hold on. No, it is Crystal Domain. I forgot the. I got it right. I just forgot the. So the Crystal Domain already started a series where he was looking at this purely through a domain perspective, and I didn't want to step on toes too much. So I decided to not do the focal point on the domain stuff. But anyway. So, yeah, the point of this is, in gameplay normally, right, you play Raigeki, it's meaningful. You have to think about, how much you contribute to the board in slower Yu-Gi-Oh! So you don't just get blown out by Raigeki. But Dark Hole's interesting because you can't just play it. You might blow up your own stuff. You could also potentially combo with your own stuff. There becomes more of an interesting element and thought process when playing Dark Hole. Swords of Revealing Light is a great card design because it does so many things. It stays in the field so it can be outed by lots of cards. It protects it for 3 turns, so it's not even permanent floodgate. It flips up your opponent's monsters. It does so many different things. Monster Reborn can be from either graveyard, has this sort of comeback vibe to it. It's a very epic anime moment, right? So I'm basically rating the cards by how interesting they are. That's totally fine. I was just going to say Worm Beast is really good. It dodged all spell removal and really could only be taken out by Trap Hole Mirror Force. Yeah. I've been told by a Yugi Kaiba fanatic that they love Wicked Worm Beast. They were even talking about like my friend Kenzie mentioned earlier, Rescue Cat can summon it out and then it returns to hand instead of being popped at the end of the turn. There's definitely really cool use there. I just think that it kind of does the one thing and there's not a lot of variety there. It feels to me as interesting as something like Hane. You also got to think all spirit monsters do what Wicked Worm Beast does, right? When we get to spirit monsters, they're all going to do this plus something else. They don't have the rescue cat part, and they can't be special summoned like Wicked War and Beast can. So that is a big difference. But generally, a lot of the synergies that we think about with spirit monsters apply to it. So I remember my friend in high school who didn't play Yu-Gi-Oh! Playing Duel Academy on his phone being like, man, Wicked War and Beast is rough. I can never touch that thing. It does feel like that. When you're playing Playground Yu-Gi-Oh! This card's crazy. You feel like you just can't get rid of it. And meanwhile, you're losing card advantage over and over again. And this card doesn't go away. But yeah, but I am open to input from chat. I am just kind of talking a lot. I got a lot of thoughts and a lot to say, but okay, Neo is uninteresting as a travesty, one of the best flavor See, and I said at the beginning of the stream, the way that my terminology is for each of the categories is a little misleading. Like, obviously the Blue Eyes White Dragon is a memorable card. Like, of course it is. You have to remember this is a card design perspective. It's not anything else. I love my guy Neo. Neo is one of my favorite normal monsters ever. I had Yugi starter deck first, so I grew up having this card. But yeah, in terms of if the cards just set the tone for stat amounts and they don't do anything else, I put them in an interesting. So like you're even gonna see in a second, like I have Lord of D in inoffensive, but Flute of Summoning Dragon is not gonna be an inoffensive. We're gonna talk about it. Also, Man-Eater Bug, we already talked about this in LOB, it's memorable. What next? Change of Heart. Okay. I have very, very mixed feelings on the whole concept of change control cards. For a while, I hated these cards. I think they are so swingy. They change games that are very strategic and methodical to suddenly your opponent just take something you were doing. It's way, way stronger than something like Monster Reborn. Because if they have an established field and you change of heart them, oh my god, you change of heart a Magician of Faith, flip it up, you've stolen their ability to get their spell card back, and you have recycled your own change of heart. You get to take their other monster too. It's crazy. Change of heart is to be least memorable. I changed my heart on change of heart. Yeah, it's a huge 2-for-1. I agree though. I like a change of heart needs to be least memorable. I would be lying if just because I personally have a problem with these cards sometimes that it isn't at least memorable. There is so much strategy and nuance to the change control cards. I do think that they're a little problematic at times though. I think that sometimes they create really blowout situations that don't feel earned. And that is my biggest contention with them. Between BrainCon and MindCon, they are better designed. Those are peak. I think Mind Control is a really well-designed card because it has restrictions on it. I would even argue that Brain Control doesn't fix enough of Change of Heart's problems to necessarily be peak. We can debate that when we get there, but it's going to be a while. That's not till 05, but Change of Heart is too memorable, and that's the problem. Yeah, it's really cool. It's really cool. So yeah, but I'm comfortable putting it here. I'm not going to put it in offensive. That'd be lying. I think it's too problematic to be in peak. Those are my feelings. Yeah, I know Brink can't take them off. It is more balanced. Yeah. Card destruction. I'm not going to lie, and y'all can disagree with me on this if you want. I think card destruction's peak. This card is so weird. What it does is so unpredictable. It's like, who knows what this card is going to do when you play it, you know? There are so many cards that do things in grave. There are so many things that happen when they're sent from hand. The fact that you're refilling your entire hand with a new hand, it is such a wild card. I think that memorable would be justifiable for it because it's not necessarily like genius mind-blowing, but I think it's such a variable that it's so interesting on every activation. Card Des, the original side deck tech to answer to Exodia. Exactly. This is the whole reason, like, you need to play this card in critter format to stand a chance against Exodia. You got to consider it. 100%. Jesse, I knew you would say that on card destruction. I know with the types of decks you play, you like this card. Also pretty balanced outside of cards like Shadal's and Burning Abyss. Yep. Well, yeah, but we're gonna, man, when we get to 2015, I think you might be tapping out. I don't know what you're gonna say when we get there. But card destruction and Master Duel to counter Maxi, that is very funny. It is very funny to win by decking someone out that way. Old Exodia playing backup soldier to counter card does. I won't watch a Dual Alliance onwards. Yeah, I assume that. And I respect it. It's fine. So yeah. Monster Reborn, we already talked about. This is peak. Dark Hole, I'll put that there. Let's just fill out the ones that we already talked about. These are all going where we talked about for the first one. Oh, D-Spell wasn't in LOB. I think I didn't realize that. Mooch Trap, inoffensive. D-Spell, pardon me. D-Spell for the same reason is inoffensive. Anything else? We already put the field spells in Mistake, and we put the equip spells in Underwhelming. The logic for this is the field spells are reciprocal. And like, so for example, Yami in this format, you're just boosting up your opponent's strongest stuff. If you're building a cube around it and people are drafting, it's just kind of weird. Monster Reborn is peak solely because you get to exclaim, "Reborn the monster!" Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, but equips are fine. Just the concept of stat boosting that can be interacted with, it's fine. You know, there's something there. All right, dude. So on for the spells. Last Will. Last Will is a crazy card. This card kind of says, do whatever combo you want. I don't think this is... This card is so fascinating that I will put it in memorable, but it's not peak because this card kind of doesn't have proper restrictions in place. The potential is huge, but it's just not balanced. I think that it needs to be memorable for that reason. Again, I'm open to arguments about it, but this is how I feel on first glance. It's not future proofed at all. Yeah. Meanwhile, Soul Exchange, peak. One of my favorite cards of all time. Soul Exchange is such a good card. Such a good card. The fact that you get to tribute your opponent's monster, the fact that you lose the battle phase, the fact that it works with any effect that tributes. It's not just for summoning monarchs. You can econ their guy. You can do anything with this card. You could Soul Exchange tribute their monster for a ritual summon. Like, it's so good and open. It feels anime of all these cards. So I love Soul Exchange. So good. And that's what I mean. Like, Change of Heart, it's not as well balanced. It's not as well designed in comparison. Obviously you can't do the funny Magician of Faith thing I mentioned earlier, but yeah. Flute I also think is okay. I actually want to hear input on this. I'm gonna wait for chat to talk on this. Flute Summoning Dragon, I think is peak. Thoughts? I think this card's peak. Screw off. Give me feedback here. I want to hear arguments for or against this. I could be overrating this card. Flute is inoffensive. I'm gonna let him roll in. So, okay. Well, I'll say a little bit. I think Flute is such a unique, interesting effect. I think that the fact that it makes you build in such a specific way for a payoff of extra specials, establishing cool dragon support from day one, it's an outside the box kind of card. I think it's so interesting in terms of that. It's not powerful. It requires build around and setup, but imagine building a draft environment or a cube environment where you want Flute. It's one of the best payoffs you could be doing. How fun is that? Unique since archetypes weren't a thing. People who tried to use this card back in the day was against Ban Blue Eyes. Like, there's history there. There is. And it fell off very quickly. But imagine, like, this is the headspace that I want to get people in as I make more, like, sort of, you know, formats designed around certain things. No, it was bad even at release. like Joshua, I respect what you're saying. I do. I'm because again, I'm not saying this card's good. This card had playability for like 1, maybe 2 formats and never again. So I totally understand. Yeah, but we're not arguing that it's meta, right? We're arguing, is it an interesting card from card design standpoint? And from that standpoint, I think it'd be like, imagine like you're playing a bunch of cards that turbo out Lord of D. You don't really have access to other powerful cards, right? But you can turbo out Lord of D, and your whole game plan is, can I get a Lord of D or one of its retrains that's treated as Lord of D and the Flute of Summoning Dragon to either bring out dragons from the hand, or you play Melody to bring them from the graveyard. What? Imagine an environment like that. That sounds fun, doesn't it? Like, that's the type of thing I'm talking about. Compare that to, like, I don't know, I could design a format around Mysterious Puppeteer, and like you just sit on Mysterious Puppeteer and try to gain life points off your opponent summoning stuff. And then I don't know, maybe you play like Fire Princess to burn them every time it happens. I don't know. It's so much effort and work for not flashy or cool payoff that you can argue. Yeah, Mysterious Puppeteer Cube. Look, there are some cards that you can like build around and it's feasible, but like, are you gonna have fun doing that? I feel like Flute is a fun card. We got to get the Puppeteer Cube. Look. If people can send in enough ideas, I'll build a cube for whatever, and I'll make videos on it. I've been trying to get back into that. So Flute, I think at lowest is memorable. I'm gonna be very biased and put it in peak because I like it so much. But I don't know. I'm down to hear arguments about it. At the very least, if I put this in the video and people are like, why would you put Flute up there? At least I get to hear the discourse. I want to know where people are with stuff like this. So, but Joshua, totally respect it. I don't disagree with you. Like, you could definitely see this card and be like, what, I have to draw this? There's so much work I have to put around for this card to do anything ever. Like you compare this to like Swords or any of the other cards in Peak that pretty much on their own or very easily in combination with other cards, they do something. But I just think that this is where the intrigue of the effect comes into play really heavy. So that's where I feel on it. Ukazi, this is where the burn damage actually becomes a relevant amount, and I will put it in uninteresting instead of mistake. And yeah, Flute does that in a positive way. I agree. Dying Keto, also relevant life point amount, uninteresting. Inexperienced Spy, Ancient Telescope, mistake. Awful, terrible cards. What are they thinking? We talked about Dragon Capture Jars in uninteresting. Trap Hole was in memorable. Two-pronged Attack was in mistake. Now all these are new. Now you know if they have honest. Yeah, if you pick the right one. Spoiler, they don't in Yugi Kaiba format. Okay, so I'm going to start with the easier evaluation ones. Ultimate Offering. This is either in memorable or inoffensive. I do not think this card is in peak. I can see arguments for it, but I think it's in one of these two. And I'm going to explain why. I'll put it in memorable for now. Memorable because it's offensive. The Ultimate Offering is interesting mostly because you can also use it during your opponent's turn. I think that duality is interesting. Peak just because of gadgets. Offering is probably more inoffensive. It's memorable in combos with mediocre wise. Yeah, I think this, like, the exact responses I'm getting here are why I think memorable does make sense for it. There's so many arguments you can have for it. I think at its worst, Ultimate Offering just creates really, I don't know. Ultimate Offering creates these really uninteresting situations as well, where like the person just summons a bunch of monsters and doesn't do anything with them. You have to combo it with monsters that like are really going to make use of it. But there's so much potential in the card that's so unlike anything else that has been printed in the game. I can't take away too much from it. But I just don't think on its own it creates these incredible, oh my god, situations like the other cards do. I think Ultimate Offering is probably memorable. Burns resources. Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it. Yeah, you just summon 3 monsters and attack. Like, it does create a thought process a little bit. But I don't know. It's just kind of a weird card. But yeah. But I think everyone made some good points. Oh, have I read the original print? That both players can use it? Yeah, they did errata that, right? You can't use both players can't use it anymore. But I'm pretty sure you can use it during opponent's battle phase still. Wabaku, I also think it's memorable or peak. It's up here. So here's the thing. Wabaku blanks a battle phase. Very cool. Wabaku's peak. Um, well, okay. I see what you're saying with the reasoning, Kenzie. Memorable. Not you don't see it often because there are better choices now, right? But Wabaku creates really interesting. Yeah, yeah. The original text is really confusing. Memorable for Wabaku. Okay, let me list its pros. Right, Wabaku it protects your monsters, but it still creates the battle, right? So like if you're playing Glad Beasts, they still get to tag out, right? If you need a monster to battle and not die, this is the way to do it. Unlike Threatening Roar. One of my favorite things to do with Wabaku in critter format is my opponent has their Lajin or 7-colored fish or whatever, and I have my own. I ram into them. They have an option to play Mirror Force or not or whatever. I chain Wabaku and we run into each other and it kills their monster, right? Or even better yet in tempo, they try to do that to me and I flip Wabaku and my guy doesn't die. At release, Wabaku was the only card that stopped battle phase and protected your monsters. Yeah, and that's the thing. If you play Threatening Roar, you can't have the interaction as talked about. A lot of the battle phase ending cards don't have that nuance that Wabaku does. It is a pretty big change in what's going on. But here's where I have to wonder: is Wabaku more interesting than something like Wall of Illusion? I actually think maybe it is because Wabaku can chain. That's the thing. If you try to remove it with back row stuff, Wall of Illusion, if you use monster removal, it's dead. It's gone. Wabaku, you can chain. You can time when you play it in all these different ways. I think there's a lot of thought that goes into it. More interesting than Trapmaster because using anything can be chained. Yep. I like Wabaku. Let's put it in peak. I think I agree with that. I think we're like Wabaku. I think at a glance, it can be looked at as memorable or inoffensive because if you don't know how to use it in all those ways, it's not going to be as interesting. But I think here it is. Okay. We're going to go with reinforcements now. So reinforcements, at minimum, is uninteresting. But I think it's inoffensive. Reinforcements created a whole new interaction where during the battle phase, you can change the math and run over something. It could be memorable because it creates a gameplay interaction that doesn't exist in any other card. The problem with it is that is all it does. Like when you look at the other cards, you can think of different types of timing and ways it can be used. The only time you're using reinforcements is to trick someone during the battle phase to get rid of their monster. Or maybe go for a game in some way where you don't have the stuff. First damage step card, yeah. So it's worth noting. It's definitely more interesting than the equips that increase your power, but it's not much more than that. I would put it in inoffensive. Castle Walls, however, is a mistake. This card's not worth it. This card's awful. Increasing your defense has not been made a useful tool for a lot of time. Reinforcements eventually led to life hack. Always very true, Draco. Very true. Closing out games. Yeah, I don't know. Like, it's funny that you could do that with Wall of Illusion. Castle Walls is reinforcement, but awful. Yeah, it's just in so many ways. I feel like Castle Walls, it's not winning you combat. You're not getting rid of a monster. That's the main difference. And what Castle Walls is could have been a different card that deals with their monster that isn't so conditional. It's just not a use case for this thing. Yeah. Just Desserts. So as someone who does not like burn very much, I actually think Just Desserts is a memorable burn card. It could be inoffensive though. I'm either way for this. I like that Just Desserts has a condition that relies on the opponent. You can give your opponent monsters to use it, but it's a build around in that situation. It changes your deck on building, and if you're drafting and Just Desserts is in it, yeah, it may burn playable for a while. I think this is one of the better, less annoying burn cards. Like when this card is played, outside of like Ojama Trio, maybe Black Garden later, I don't know. I don't know if people are playing Just Desserts then. Like you would at the very least feel like when you're given those cards for the burn damage on just desserts, they had to do a 2-card combo to make anything out of it, or you overcommitted, and that's why you're taking the damage. It feels like a fair burn card in some ways. It's when you start pairing it alongside these other really crazy burn cards that it feels kind of ridiculous. I think making a whole deck go from activate sparks to pray to win, let me reread that. I think making a whole deck go from activate sparks and pray to a whole win conditional. Yep, completely agree. I think Just Desserts actually like made burn a thoughtful deck instead of just did I draw the burn cards, and that's the difference to me. So the last one, Reverse Trap. So this card is really interesting. I actually think it's an inoffensive because it does nothing by itself. But alongside other cards, this is a super interesting card. Being able to just reverse all stat changes, right? Like, think about, like, you have Light and Darkness Dragon, and it's done all of its negates, and then all of a sudden you flip it. Uninteresting, it doesn't have enough cases to actually run it. Right, but neither does Remove Trap. But I can envision an environment where you are, like, remember, Mysterious Puppeteer is like the poster child to a cube of this probably wouldn't be interesting. If I built around this card, then what's the payoff? We sit there and we wait and watch each other gain life points. The payoff for Reverse Trap is you get to do these really wonky situations where, like, let's say you're playing a bunch of monsters, spells, and traps. Yeah, exactly. The potential of this card is really weird. I would like to see that. Reverse Trap could be in a cube and it could be played, yeah. And that's the most you can say about it. Like, basically, most of these cards in Inoffensive, on their own, are never seeing the light of day. But you can envision a reality where they're used. Except for Wicked Worm Beast, I know that that's a use case, but yeah. There's a stint for a lot of these cards. We can't, like, I made a use case for Dragon Capture Jar for a cube, just in, like, you recreate the LOB environment where the most powerful cards are dragons and the weaker monsters are not. So Dragon Capture Jar gets used, but even then, I feel like there's just more interesting things you could do in that cube environment. Can I follow you on TikTok? Is that a real question? I don't know if it's a real question. So yeah. Yeah, I thought so. Okay. So I think we're good on these decks. Wow, we didn't even have a ton of new cards in here. We still talked about that for a while. So let me go ahead. We'll do SDY, SDK, tier list, Vagabond. Done. Hold on. Did it again? No. Oh, no. I need to say card design specifically so people understand what this is when they look at it. Boom. Save that. Oh, I can't have the slash when I save it as a file. Then we'll save that. It's taking a second to load. I don't know why. Interesting. Yeah, I don't know what it's doing. Did it actually save? Okay, it did. Okay, we're good. All right. On to Metal Raiders. Okay. So we're going to start the same way we did the other ones. There are going to be some cards that we recognize. We're going to put them in place. Underwhelming. We're going to put all these normal monsters in Mistake. This was a set. We're going to... This set is bloated as all hell. There are way too many cards in this set. Make a tier list just for MSC. No. It's not that much better than everything else, but MSC is a really good card. All this stuff is going in here. Boom, boom. And there's a 7-colored fish. We drop that in there. You're all understanding where this is at this point. If I see 1700 or higher in a level 4, it's going there. If I see 2k defense, it's going there. Oh, I just realized y'all can't hear. I'm just talking. There's no music playing. I thought there was music playing the whole time. Oh, I clicked off of it. I must have... When did I do that? Huh. Alright, whatever. I guess I clicked the wrong thing initially. There hasn't been music the entire time. Whatever. We'll keep it the way it is now. I'll fix that for next time. Well, there was supposed to be, but I guess I clicked the wrong thing and it's not there. I'm gonna have to get rid of this profile in OBS so this doesn't happen in the future. It'll just make the editing slightly more convenient now, I guess. Alright, any normal monsters in here that I'm missing? No, I think that's everything. Okay. And then we also have Change of Heart. We already talked about this. This goes into Memorable. Are there any other cards we already talked about in here? No. Okay. Gate Guardian, mistake. Do we need to talk about Gate Guardian being a mistake? I feel like this is very self-explanatory. This card's not interesting. It's just annoying. Like, yeah. Yeah, thanks, man. Making me have to do extra editing after I'm done. I'm gonna wait for that one to leave. All right. So, no, you're good. All right, all right, all right. So, what was I saying? Barrel Dragon. I think Barrel Dragon is... I'm actually going to say inoffensive. It's a coin flip card, which I normally would just immediately put into... I would normally just put it into Underwhelming because it's a coin flip card. But the fact that Barrel Dragon has such a high chance of actually destroying monsters makes it kind of interesting. So I'm going to put it in inoffensive. Oh, wait. Is that the right... That is the right art. Yeah. That's the TCG art. Sanga of the Thunder, Suijin, and Kazejin, their battle-changing effects are cute. I don't think they're inoffensive, though. I think that the fact that they're already such big monsters, the battle thing doesn't happen often enough. I could be persuaded to put them in inoffensive. They kind of do something, I guess. Maybe I'll circle back to that. I don't know what chat's thinking, but these cards, they're okay. They're fine. I guess they do something, which is a little more. They're vanillas with effects. That, yeah, like the effects are not important enough to where do they really go up another tier? I don't think so. They're gonna come up so little. Thunder Dragon is, I'm gonna say, memorable. Thunder Dragon is just a whole different kind of card. It's deck thinning. It provides you cards in hand for discard effects later. I think that has some use, you know? You could put it in inoffensive because it doesn't really do anything, but the interaction it has with other cards and just gameplay in general is kind of... It's unique. It's chaos fodder, you know? Swamp and Lava are mistakes. They're not... Their gimmick is not interesting enough to be even worth mentioning. They go in there. Let me remind myself about Pumpkin. What is the condition on this card? If they were level 4, they could be... Yes, if they were level 4, I completely agree. I think they would have been inoffensive if they were level 4. Alright, Pumpkin. If Castle of Dark Illusions is face up on the field, increase the attack and defense of this card by 100. As long as Castle Illusions remains face up on the field, the attack and defense of this card continues to increase by 100. No. Stupid. I thought the stat boost would be a little more meaningful than that, but it's pretty bad. Yeah, so I'm just flat out going to say this is a bad card. Whatever gimmick is going on here, it's not worth investing in. The stat boost is way too low. It takes so many more turns. No, mistake. Shadow Ghoul is underwhelming. The concept of this card is kind of cool, but again, the stat boost is too little. You have to have way too many monsters in the graveyard for this to do anything interesting. So I say underwhelming. Catapult Turtle. This is going to be a bit controversial. I think Catapult Turtle is a mistake. It's not because this card has no use case, But this is one of the rare times in these early sets that it's not just because the card is too bad to talk about. Catapult Turtle and cards like it, like, where is he? In the same set. Cannon Soldier. There is interesting gameplay to be had with these cards. Yes, it's memorable, but not because it's very interesting. I completely agree. Catapult Turtle and Cannon Soldier both create really stupid loops and OTKs, FTKs in some cases. They're just dumb. Like, I would rather be doing most anything else in Yu-Gi-Oh! Than this. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm going to give them credit. You can last will Catapult Turtle to do interesting stuff. In Critter format specifically, I really like Cannon Soldier because you get to do interesting things like off your Witch or Sangan, surge a Cannon Soldier when their opponent's low on life and just burn them for the last like remaining life they have. There is an interesting mind game with Cannon Soldier there. And I'm sure there are some formats where that still remains the case. I just don't think it validates everything else that's really bad about it. Cannon Will Exodia is really cool. Exactly. Yeah, I think there are use cases for both these cards, mostly Cannon Soldier, that are interesting, but overall, I think their card design is very bad. So I think they're mistakes. Harpy Lady Sisters, I also think is a mistake. I think that Elegant Egotist is a very, very... In fact, I'll rate it right now. I think Elegant Egotist is a memorable card. It's not peak. It's not inoffensive. I think the whole idea of having a really cool payoff for playing a monster you otherwise would never use is interesting, but I do not like Garnets. I think Garnets are very, very annoying, and I think that especially when the Garnets don't have a meaningful payoff other than I'm a big monster. I don't mess with it. My personal opinion. Anyone has any objection to that, they can say something. But I think this is pretty set in stone. Like, if I'm going to play a Garnet, it's got to be better than Harpy Lady Sisters. Yep. I agree. I very much agree with that. Great Moth, mistake, obviously. Larva Moth, mistake. All of these bad multi-turn cards in this format. Cocoon of Evolution is only underwhelming because it's got 2,000 defense. It's not because of its effect. This whole concept is really stupid. If it was faster, that'd be one other thing. Jirai Gumo is underwhelming. I'm saying uninteresting because I misworded it in the last one. Jirai's not peak. I'm going to need to hear your reasoning on this. Jirai, so I like that it plays like an attack mode defense monster. Because you're not always attacking with it. The points are just really high. My problem with Jirai Gumo is... Well, you know what? I could be moved. I could be moved to inoffensive only because it's funny. When Jirai Gumo is being played, you're always like, am I going to lose my life points or not? Are you going to risk the attack or not? There is a fun element of this card. I have to give it some credit for that. I don't love it. I think I would choose most other like high-statted monsters that do something over this card, but it does create an interesting gameplay in interaction. I will acknowledge that. But I don't know. It's one of these two places. The card is extremely strong and make critter format way more interesting than it would have been otherwise. 2200 is a really cool attack number because of an equip spell that beats over Summoned Skull. Yeah. It has its uses. It's cool. The coin flip into kill yourself is very funny. It's funny. I got to give it credit for just like there's not another card like Jirai Gumo in Yu-Gi-Oh. Not really. There might be some that are close. Dark Elf I don't think is as interesting as Jirai Gumo. In fact, now that I think about it, the fact that Dark Elf kind of locks you into it at a certain point, you could argue it's a tier below Jirai Gumo, but they're kind of twins. The fact that you are paying to attack and you're hesitating attacking with your big monster, it does create a dynamic that wouldn't be there otherwise. I'll go with an offensive for Dark Elf. Creating the interaction, yeah. I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that. Okay. Dream Clown and Crass Clown. Now, I haven't played Critter in a while, But when I was playing Critter, the very first thing I tried was Clown Control. And in a format where Clown Control was not good. And I like these cards quite a bit. I think that they are memorable cards. The whole concept of needing to swap your battle positions and play in this stally way where you're still interacting with your opponent is really cool. Too many stall decks in Yu-Gi-Oh! Are anti-interaction. This is the opposite. You are stalling to interact with your opponent. And I think that's very cool. The fact that they are different sorts of removal as well. You got to decide which is better in this deck, Crass or Dream. What are you going to pop versus what are you going to bounce? The fact that Crass Clown can trigger off of Flip Summon, you can set it first and then move it. It kind of works as a defensive pivot, especially in Critter. I think in Critter, Crass Clown actually has use for it. Dream is much harder there, but in later formats where you can properly protect a Dream is a much better card. Dream Clown on releases, whatever, exactly. But it ended up being a competent build around, especially in Limited, for sure. I think these cards are super interesting. Like, any card that does something good with a condition is automatically more interesting than a card that just does the thing. White Magical Hat and Mass Sorcerer. These are kind of similar. I want to say that these cards are memorable. The fact that there is immediately pressure they put on people, getting more cards or less cards. They're both cool in that way. The only problem with White Magical Hat is we get Donzalug later. But even then, White Magical Hat still, if Donzalug never existed, would be an interesting card on its own merit. Yeah, Giant Rat Summon Dream Clown. Yeah, I completely agree. Okay. Now we're on to these guys. Sangan and Witch. I think some people would say these are peak Yu-Gi-Oh cards. Are they? I'm wondering. They're peak? I think I agree. I think Sangan and Witch are peak. I think these cards, they're so open. There's so many ways. You could search so many different cards. You can have such different sequences in which you play them. They can be used to pressure your opponent to not run over them at the wrong time. You can run into your opponent to get the search. Yeah, I think they're peak. There's so much about them that's super cool. They're too versatile to be anything less than peak. I could see that. I think sometimes they feel a little too auto-include in some cases, and they're just whatever you want, and in that way it feels like you're not thinking, but that's not fair. That's not the totality of how they function as cards. So yeah, I'll say peak. Similarly, I think Moth and Mask of Darkness are peak. I think both these cards are very versatile in the same way that Trapmaster is versatile, but the difference is these cards say any spell and any trap. So you get to really, like if you're building a cube environment, a draft environment, whatever, these cards allow you to dictate their power level on the other cards. Like when we think of Magician of Faith being broken, what if you didn't have access to the Trinity, to the Power 5 and all that sort of stuff, right? If you don't have access to those spell cards, Magician of Faith becomes weaker. But it's still good. If you have any good spell cards in the format, it's a usable card and you get to have thoughtful card design around it. So, yeah, I think all of these are really cool cards that they sort of accommodate themselves to whatever the includes are in the format, as opposed to on their own being game-ending monsters, you know? So I think they all are in their spot there. The attribute boosters of every type. So they all increase their stat by 500 attack and decrease it by 400. These are interesting effects. I think that they are inoffensive. The reason they're inoffensive is they do make a meaningful difference on the board, but they don't work isolated. They are so easy to kill. They're not worth normal summoning off of an unestablished board, and sometimes they boost your opponent. But unlike the early field spells in like Umi and Mountain and all that sort of stuff, the boosts are meaningful. They're significant to where they are very game-changing. So I think they're inoffensive. I think that 500 attack was a lot. It is something to consider. But they're just not reliable enough to be anything above this. So yeah, I'd say they're around there. Um, okay. Mushroom Man. I'm going to Miles Radiant lets Jirai attack over someone's skull. That's really funny. I hadn't even thought about that. Mushroom Man, I'm gonna put in underwhelming. The only reason it's this is the one that this one has seen a lot of really weird gimmicks over the years. It like changing control and doing all sorts of stuff like that. But it just doesn't do anything by itself to the point where I care enough that it has that gimmick. So it's worth noting. It's not a complete mistake because of that gimmick, but the gimmick is whatever. Yeah, I was decided to deck to beat Kashira, which is funny. That is funny. And there are all sorts of funny interactions you can think about with it, but it's fine. It's fine. Dragon Piper is funny. Hold on, let me make sure that I'm remembering this correctly. I'm pretty sure that Dragon Piper destroy all face of dragon capture jars on the field. If you destroy any, change all face of dragon type monsters in the field to attack. It's just so hyper specific and conditional. Like it's also a pyro, so there's not even really many combos you can do with this card until pretty recently, I guess. Maybe they exist. I don't even know. So I'm gonna have to say that Dragon Piper is this card's a mistake. I don't think it's worth it. My Dragon Capture Jar Cube exactly. It just doesn't do enough. See, this is where I have to remind myself of certain card effects. I don't remember all of these. Insect Soldiers from the Sky. Where is that guy? Where is it? There we go. If it attacks a wind, you gain 1,000. So it becomes a 2K under conditions you can't control. Mistake. Dumb, bad card. Put Dragon Piper in peak. Draco, one day we're going to have some sort of either cube or domain duel all around Dragon Capture Jar and Dragon Piper. It'll be the meta, I promise. But in a general sense, no. In fact, run that by me if you want to make it. I'm interested. Time Wizard. So Time Wizard, in the same way that Barrel Dragon is inoffensive, this is inoffensive. I know that the urge to put it in memorable or peak because it's really funny, creates really good moments, but it's in the same way that Barrel Dragon and Jirai Gumo do. You're on the edge of your seat like, is it going to work? But it's not so cool that it allows for a lot of skill expression. So I think it's along its brethren here. I will play the Dragon Capture Jar Cube if you make it. I'll think on that. I'll think on that. Bystro Butcher, I understand that there is a use case for Bystro Butcher. I understand that you can play, like, Appropriate and draw cards off this thing. There's, like, some uses for it. I don't care. This card's a mistake. It's stupid. It doesn't do anything in most cases. That hyper-specific situation is not worth building something entirely around. If someone disagrees with me, go for it. I just don't like this card. Tainted Wisdom. It's underwhelming because at 1800. No, I disagree. Even with the 1800, it's not warranted. You should not be running this card, even at 1800 attack. Having like Boar Soldier is not making it just because it's 2000 attack. You know, it's got to go in mistake because Boar Soldier's awful. If this attack should have changed the defense shuffle your deck. Mistake. Mistake. Muka Muka is underwhelming. I understand an argument for being inoffensive because there is a mind game with it, but you're really just getting this card up to usable stats a lot of the time. So I'm putting it in underwhelming. Joshua, I imagine you might have some contention with this, so you let me know. But I think Muka Muka is an underwhelming. Muka's inoffensive. But even then, what else is it doing? Right? If you got 2100, like, let's say the threshold in Yu-Gi-Oh! Becomes higher, like to 2100, like the defense threshold ends up being. Is that so important that you're going to be putting it in inoffensive? it does beat over it. Like, I see the use case, but it's just a dude, right? Like, think of it this way, right? Dark Elf and Jiraigumo, the reason they're here is because of the psychological effect it has, right? In fact, this actually is making me think that Dark Elf should be underwhelming. Jiraigumo, because of the coin flip, has that whoa factor in the way the Barrel Dragon and Time Wizard kind of do. Dark Elf is just, you got to think a little bit. There is strategy to it. In the same way that Muka Muka kind of does. You have to think about your hand size, I guess. But yeah, I think this means Dark Elf actually goes down. I don't think it means Muka Muka goes up. Yeah, I think I'm putting Dark Elf down a tier. Because it doesn't do that same funny thing. Yeah. Okay. Rainbow Flower, okay, and here are the legion of all the monsters that just say it attacks directly. They're all in here for some reason. I don't get this. No, no, no. It's not interesting. It's not interesting. If anything, I'd put like Jinzo 7 in underwhelming for having that effect, because it's the highest statted one. But that's it. Mystic Lamp. I know Blast Juggler is terrible. I know Yadokaru's not good. Big Eye's dumb. Steel Scorpion's awful. What does the Swordsman do? I'm pretty sure this is bad too. It's like super conditional. Tribute a monster to get 7. Yeah. Sacrifice a monster to make it the same stats as something that I'm putting in mistake. No. Immortal of Thunder is funny. But no. It's so specific. Like, this is not good unless you have another card. Queen's Double attacks directly. Electric Lizard is also attack directly. I don't even remember. So now we're at effect monsters that kind of do something. Karibo is, I would say, underwhelming. Queen's Double is part of a fusion. But is the fusion any good? Which one is it? Is it Empress Judge? But Empress Judge is going a mistake too. So I don't think that matters. Yeah, I don't think that matters. It is a good note. I appreciate you pointing that out, but I don't think it matters. The stat line isn't good. Like, of the monsters that are fusions that are going in underwhelming, it's just going to be the high stat ones. It's not going to be most of these. All right, anyway. Unhappy Maiden, underwhelming. It blanks a battle phase. It's fine. It's like Karibo in that way, right? It's whatever. Princess of Tsurugi. I like this card in the same way that I like Just Desserts. I think this card is cool because it depends on how much your opponent has played. And it's variable burn damage, you know? I like this card. Castle of Dark Illusions, it's just a defensive guy. It's an honorary 2K defender. The effect doesn't matter. It's whatever. Okay, time for the fusions. Punished Eagle goes here. Skull Knight goes here. Empress Judge goes here. Deep Sea Shark goes here. All of this. Musician King has some level of use because one of the fusion material is Witch. Guilty of D-Knight, Rabbit Horseman, Commodore Attack, Cybersaurus. All of the other fusions here have some sort of validity in terms of their material or their stats. But again, are you using them really? Thunder Dragon is better to do its materials. Thunder Dragon is notable because of that exactly. It actually has a use case because of what Thunder Dragon is. I'm still iffy to put it in offensive even. I think that just puts it in underwhelming because it has a use case like that. I don't even think it's enough to put it up a tier. It is a cool thing, but that's just because Thunder Dragon's usable. It doesn't make Twin-Headed Thunder Dragon better, I guess. Labyrinth Tank is pretty bad, but it did win a critter tournament once. I don't know if that's never going to happen again. Yeah, you know what? I'm actually not going to put most of the... I'm going to put these in because of their stats. Like I said earlier, they clear 25, which makes them kind of useful in the way that Guy the Dragon Champion did. But, like, it doesn't even matter if your materials are that good, because you're not fusing most of the time. And also Music King being good because of Witch. Well, Witch is in peak already. It's not Witch. It doesn't get points because it's of Witch. So these are in here because of stats, and that's all I'm going to say about them. I think that's the only way I can justify that. Okay, on to spells. Share the Pain. Share the Pain's not good. It's not a mistake, but it's... You could argue this goes in inoffensive, but I think it goes in underwhelming. There are so many cool removal cards in Yu-Gi-Oh! And this is kind of like two-pronged attack, where it's just like, eh. It can out-towers. You know what? That is true. Because it is an effect. It is an effect that makes the opponent choose. I hadn't thought about that. I will put it in inoffensive. Just because of the weird wording on this card and the way it works, I will put it in inoffensive. Sort of deep-seated, I'm also going to put in inoffensive. This card has uses for the infinite going back to the top of the deck that are unlike any other card. I don't think on its own it does anything very interesting, but it has a use case. Yeah, Sword Deep Sea is really funny. I agree. Shield and Sword. I actually think this is in memorable. I think that the swapping of attack and defense points creates a lot of interesting situations. It allows you to build boards that have a defense orientation, and then suddenly you just flip it on its head. And like, I put Odama Country in memorable. I think a lot of the defense monsters suddenly become usable in a different way is interesting. Yeah, absolutely. It's a build around. I think this card's super cool. And it has so many implications. Like, you see these monsters that have effects that require them to do damage or something like that, and now they can actually do them differently, you know? Tremendous Fire. This card's underwhelming. It's valuable burn damage, but it's not really thoughtful. It just does the damage, you know? Cheerful Coffin. I'm gonna say mistake. There's just not a world where you want to use Cheerful Coffin over the myriad of other more interesting discard cards. I just don't see it. I get that it does 3 of them. We have card destruction. We have hand destruction. Well, hand destruction doesn't discard, it sends, doesn't it? So never mind. We don't have hand destruction. But we have other discard options. Soul Release is inoffensive. The reason that this card is here instead of Gravedigger Ghoul is in underwhelming, I'm pretty sure, right? Let me double check that. Yeah, I put it in underwhelming. Soul Release is at least a real side deck card. Yeah, and Soul Release also can work in your graveyard. It banishes from either player's graveyard, right? I'm pretty sure. Let me make sure I'm not making that up. Whoop. Yeah, in any graveyard. It's just a very versatile card. It can use more targets, all that sort of stuff. So I like Soul Release for that reason. Heavy Storm. In the same way that Dark Hole is peak Yu-Gi-Oh!, Heavy Storm is peak Yu-Gi-Oh! The mind games that Heavy Storm creates, the fact that it changes the entire way you play the game by it merely existing, is so cool. I really like Heavy Storm. I don't think I need to sell this card on people. It's great. Such a good card. Germ Infection. Stupid. Ring of Magnetism. I actually think this card's inoffensive. I like Ring of Magnetism. I think it's like, it has sort of a use like Shield and Sword does, where it's a really unique card that, like, you know, the redirecting attacks and stuff like that. It's just really hard to give it a situation where it matters. But every now and then I see Ring of Magnetism in like a limited environment, and I'm like, that's a really cool card. I really like that card. So it's just too bad to see it very often. But I like it. Paralyzing Potion. I'm putting in underwhelming. This card does something. You could put it inoffensive. I just think it's boring. We have so many ways to, like, stop attacks, right? Like, Karibo's probably more interesting than Paralyzing Potion in a lot of situations. I just think it doesn't do enough. It's such a low payoff. Paralyzing Potion is boring, but it's useful and limited. It is, yeah. Like, I can't put it in mistake. It's not that low. But I just think of, like, when you look at everything in inoffensive, right? Look at all these cards. the high octane, whoa, what's Barrel Dragon gonna pop? What's Time Wizard gonna pop? Are you gonna lose half your life towards your Agumo? All the stat boosting cards that like change the entire field stats when they hit the field. Share the Pain being a unique form of removal. Sword of Deep Sea doing really weird stuff. Soul Release having this potential to really change up the graveyards. And Ring of Magnetism creating a really unique situation where like, whoa, attacks are being redirected. Paralyzing Potion just, you can't attack with this one monster, and it's easily removed. The moment it gets run over, the moment there's removal on the field, like, the potential is so low, and it just doesn't change much. So, I think it's an underwhelming card. But it is useful and limited. It's not completely bad, like, freaking germ infection. I will change my monster to a machine so it can attack again. Wait, it doesn't work on machine monster. I forgot about that. I completely forgot about that. Block attack, mistake. This is a very bad card. You could do this, or you could use Shield and Sword, which is more interesting, or you could just increase your own stats and run over the monster that way. It's just, this card's boring. Tribute to the Doomed. I think this card is memorable. Yes, I agree with you, Josh. I think Tribute to the Doomed, the fact that it requires a discard means you get that mind game of you're going to put something in the graveyard. It can hit something face up. It can hit something face down. Very flexible. Every time you enter Tribute to the Doomed, it has different gameplay implications. Can't you also destroy your own monster? Am I misremembering this? I might be making that up. You can destroy your own monster. So, yeah, it's a shame that Tribute to the Doom didn't have the same impact it did in the OCG when it got moved to the TCG, but, you know. Stim Pack is fine. I'll put it in underwhelming. It's a stat booster. The dropping of the stat turn to turn is a little silly, but it does have a mind game to it, but it's not interesting enough to make it inoffensive. Mirror Force. Mirror Force is peak. Mirror Force is peak. Because Mirror Force changed the way people attacked. It makes you think, do I put myself in defense before I attack? It made the battle phase completely different. There was weight to it. In fact, the dynamic of on-summon removal versus battle phase removal is one of the coolest things about Yu-Gi-Oh! Combat. So, Mirror Force, absolutely a peak Yu-Gi-Oh! Card. No question to me. I'm gonna say... Ooh, okay, we'll talk about the counter traps after we talk about the other traps. Fake Trap. I think Fake Trap is inoffensive. Fake Trap is funny. It has a redirection purpose to protect your other back row. It's close to underwhelming, but the fact that you can... I don't know. If you have a lot of back row, it actually has a use of protecting it all. It's something. It's sort of like Imperial Custom for continuous traps later. I can see a point in it, you know? I don't know. It's the one I do think of most of putting it down here. There's a little bit more brain power with this card. Robin Goblin. Robin Goblin is memorable. I don't think it's peak Yu-Gi-Oh! It does rely on a lot to continuously happen to really... get a good rating of this card. But the fact that when they attack in defensive monsters, they can discard a card. The fact that when you attack directly or do battle damage over their monster, they discard. The fact that it pairs with stuff like battle phase tricks like reinforcements or rush recklessly later. You can get a surprise discard off this card. I think it's about as interesting as White Magical Hats or, you know, Mass Sorcerer. I think it's about the same. Yeah, I think it's a cool card. All right, so the traps. I flat out think that all of these cards are at least memorable. Horn of Heaven has a pretty big cost to stop the attack, and that kind of hurts its usability. It's not as flexible, but it definitely is memorable. You definitely like seeing these cards if you want to stop monsters. You think Horn of Heaven's underwhelming? Really? I want to hear why. Like... How should I put it? Solemn Judgment is super iconic, though. We're going to get to Solemn. Solemn is going to be a bit more discussion than these other three. Tributing is way too high of a cost. So if you're thinking old Yu-Gi-Oh!, I agree with you. This card was never really getting off. Horn of Heaven in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Though, and I'm not talking necessarily like 2025 high octane, kill your opponent in 2 turns Yu-Gi-Oh! I mean in terms of when you're considering the entire card pool, you're considering like you have scapegoat tokens. You could have a bunch of monsters that are easy to summon that don't really have a lot of payoff. The cost of Horn of Heaven is way better, and the effect is way better than like Share the Pain or Tribute to the Doomed, or not Tribute to the Doomed. Two-pronged attack, right? Two-pronged attack was like go -2 to pop a monster. That's awful. Horn of Heaven is -2 to negate the summon of a monster, which is huge, right? If you negate the summon of Sangan, it's not getting a search. There's more implication to Horn of Heaven. It's way better than two-pronged. The cost isn't as severe. And you could feasibly build an environment where this card has a use case. And also because it's a counter trap, you have cards that interact with it, like Herald of Heaven, I think is what it's called. The 1800 fairy monster that on destruction brings it back. I think Horn of Heaven is more useful. It's definitely not as good as the other ones, though. But when I look at Horn of Heaven, I do look at it as more of a card that I'm interested in seeing than I am most of Inoffensive, and I find it more on par with the stuff in Memorable. Just from the potential the card has. But historically, I do agree with you. I think that the cost was too high, and by the time that we had other cards that were available, it was outclassed. Especially when Solemn exists, right? So, it's a very outclassed card, but if you just look at it on its face, I like it. Trap, yeah, exactly. I think so. And it's more affirmative than Trap Hole, you know? All right. We got Magic Jammer. I think Magic Jammer also has an argument for Memorable, kind of in the same way. It's a type of interaction that is very final. Because, I mean, Monster Negation is one thing, but Spell and Trap Negation is super important on its face. Just that you need to have a way to stop it on their turn. You can't just MST it. You can't Dust Tornado it. You have to stop it on activation. And this was kind of one of the first cards to let you do that. And even to this day, the effects that negate spells and traps, I mean, they're still the power level of Magic Jammer. They're just faster. You don't have to set Magic Jammer. I'm sorry, you do have to set it. You don't have to set those other cards. You don't have to discard. Jammer's Memorable Spell Negation was rare. It's still pretty rare. Yeah. So I think this card definitely earns it up here. 7 Tools, I think, even more so than the other two, especially in old Yu-Gi-Oh! But they're all kind of twins, or triplets, I guess. I think all of these cards are super, super interesting. And they just interact in the game in a very specific way. 7 Tools, I think, has more of whoa moments because you're activating it during the battle phase. You're protecting your monster from a summon. I think a lot of the time when you negate trap cards, it's a bigger deal than negating the other two in old Yu-Gi-Oh! But I'm not sure. This is such a broad thing because monster spells and traps can be so many things that, you know, judging based just on the effect is a little tricky. 7 Tools negate Wabagoo for game feels better. Yeah. So in the context of old Yu-Gi-Oh!, I think 7 Tools is my favorite of these three. But in terms of Yu-Gi-Oh! In general, I don't know. I think they're kind of in a similar spot. So I'm not going to put this back here just so that the card types are consistent so people aren't thinking I'm having a preference here on anything but just the card type organization. It's not like a tier higher than Magic Jammer. I agree with that. It's better, but it's not like so much better, right? All right, and Solemn Judgment. I'm gonna need opinions on this one. I have a lot of feelings on this card. Solemn is crazy. Solemn, pay half your life points, stop any card. This is one of the most iconic effects in Yu-Gi-Oh! My question, okay, it's peak in terms of it decides games, right? But you gotta think, is this like, how many games does this decide that you feel bad about? That's what I have to know. Because a lot of people do not like Solemn Judgment. There's no way this card's an underwhelming. It can't possibly be in there. I personally do not think this card is a mistake. I think some people would say Solemn Judgment's a mistake. I disagree. I think this card has a very unique place in Yu-Gi-Oh! And I really like it. The Solemn Brigade, generally, I'm a very big fan of. But I can understand sometimes this card feels really bad. I just think that that might be dictated by the environment that it's in more than the card itself. I don't know. I would be moved to put this card in peak. I do like it a lot. It just changes so much of Yu-Gi-Oh! Card design. I could be moved, I could be swayed to not have Solemn Judgment in peak. I could understand every opinion on this card in the book. I don't think it's like, I think people who hate Heavy are being too harsh. Heavy is a really good card. The way it shapes gameplay is really interesting. Mirror Force is the same way for me. Judgment is so much more of a variable. So just for comments on this video when I upload it, understand if you are like, Solemn Judgment's a mistake, this card should have never been printed, I get where you're coming from. I don't agree. I think Solemn Judgment is a really interesting card. And I think that it could be considered peak. Yeah, I'm going to just be spinning my wheels by talking about this. It's just kind of where I am with it. So, yeah. All right, that's Metal Raiders done, unless anyone else has a thought. But I think that we've kind of cleaned this up now. So, we'll go ahead and save this one. What was my other MRD card design? Vagabond. We'll download the image. Interestingly, in the early days, people thought Solemn was bad because they're concerned about life points. It is really funny looking back at that and seeing that. And what's funny is, if you're playing an old format like Critter format, you will get punished if you're not considerate of the life points. You got to time your activations of Solemn very well, but it is absolutely worth playing at 3. I don't know if some people play it at 2. I tend to play it at 3 when I play, because it's just such a big deal. Okay. I think we're good here. Sometimes you just got to pay half your life points to win the game. Exactly. Sometimes it's not that hard of a decision. Okay. We've got 2 more lists. I'm going to say now, I wanted to do the 2002 promos. I'll talk about them, but for some reason, Tiermaker will not load the actual tier list for the promos. But there's only a handful of these that matter anyway, so we'll get there. On to Spell Ruler. All right, so right off the bat, I'm just going to put a bunch of guys in Mistake and Underwhelming. I love Hyozen Ryu and Serpent Knight Dragon. I'm sorry. They're not that good. All these awful tribute monsters. Yeah, exactly. It's so many of them. What's really interesting, though, is we're starting to see them decline. They finally started going a little bit easy on having all these bad normal monsters, and now there's only a handful. Labyrinth Wall is actually the most interesting one here, because it's got 3k defense, and it can be summoned off Giant Rat. So... Yep, big shout out to Dark Witch and its stunt in usage in Extra Deck Monarch. Yep, very funny. Okay, so at this stage, we'll start with the tunes, because these are really weird. I think the tunes are memorable. Their gameplay, well, it's tricky. I'm not going to fault Manga Ryuran for being weaker than Blue Eyes, or being outclassed by Summon Skull. I'm just in terms of gameplay, I'm gonna put them here. All right. I understand why you're saying the tunes are mistakes. The odds of you being able to use them effectively, especially back then, was non-existent. I hear that. I like them for a lot of reasons, however. The fact that they are special summons in an era where that did not exist. The fact that yeah, no, there are definitely some things you should have cleaned up about them. They should be different than they are. There are way too many confusing stipulations on them. The fact that they are direct attacks, the fact that they blow up if their card is killed, the fact that they can't be hit. There is so much. Draco, I agree with you. We'll get there. I think the tunes are such build-arounds. Like, imagine you are playing a tune exclusive cube. You are just playing with tunes. Are they a mistake anymore? You get to create so many interesting cards in there. Like, imagine you're playing Spirit Barrier in that format, where the direct attacks aren't doing any damage anymore, and you have to like get around all of these like cards with removal. You got to get rid of the Spirit Bearer, you got to get rid of the monsters, you got to get rid of the Toon World. Like there's such a different dimension of thinking, and that's what makes them interesting to me. So like as it stands, as it was historically, these cards were nothing. But I think there's a lot of potential there. They're not peak. They're not peak by any measure, but I think there's enough to think about with them that they're above inoffensive to me. So that's my case for it. Yeah, all the recruiters in peak. The recruiters basically started Yu-Gi-Oh! I mean, like, no hate or shade to the formats before this one at all, but these recruiters changed deck building forever. And the only reason that they got power crept is because stuff started floating not by battle. But this gives validity even more. Like Mirror Force, Deep Prison, these cards already were seeing use. They were already good. Then you put in the existence of recruiters, and now you gotta play those cards, because you can't be killing these guys by battle. You have to kill them by card effects, or they're going to float. And what are you going to do? Not attack them if they're on the field and you don't have removal? You have to attack them. And at least in some cases, right? Like, you can't keep them sitting around, or your opponent's just going to have monsters available. UFO Turtle should have his own tier above peak. You know why? Yeah, a certain individual may really like that card. A certain individual responsible for domain. So yeah, absolutely, and he'll be happy if he sees this and he sees UFO as top of peak here. The other recruiters are memorable. I really like Nimble Manga and Giant Germ, but they're only for themselves. They're not for other cards, but they're cool. They're Fiend and Beast. There's synergy with there for other cards like that. They feed the graveyard. They have life point interaction, and they summon duplicates of themselves, not just one at a time. I like these cards a lot. Cyberjar is peak. Cyberjar is peak Yu-Gi-Oh! This card is insane. I think the only card we've looked at that is similar in chaos to this card is card Destruction. But Cyberjar is unlike any other card in the game. When you flip this, who knows what's going to happen? And I love it. It's so fun. As Kenzie said earlier, card Destruction is almost like a Mario Party card in Yu-Gi-Oh! Cyberjar is like that too. I really, really love this card. The field wipe, the refilling everyone's hands, it's so good. Electric Snake is I'm going to say underwhelming. There's a use case for it, but I get it. I get it, but I'd rather it be something else. All right. Kotodama. I don't know if people know what this card is. Kotodama, I'm putting it in offensive. This card says if it's on the field, monsters with the same name can't be on the field at the same time. Let me make sure I get this exactly correct so we're not confused. Okay? This card's fake, you made it up. I swear it's real. I swear Kotodama is real. This card is hilarious. Let it load. I think my internet's being a bit weird. If there are face-up monsters with the same name on the field, destroy those monsters. If a monster is summoned or flip face-up that has the same name as a monster that is already face-up on the field, the new face-up monster is destroyed. If they're summoned at the same time, they are all destroyed. This card is so funny. Imagine you build a Kotodama cube where you have only cards with the same name that come in duplicates. Let's say you build like Reborn Tengu or Pettin' the Dark Clown or the Harpy Ladies that treat themselves as Harpy Lady while they're on the field. There are so many things you can do with this. And then you play Fairy and Earth support so you can search the Kotodama at a moment's notice, right? And so it's a war of all of the monsters in the cube are only monsters that are worth playing in duplicate. And then you play Kotodama. Like, there's got to be something cool you can do with this card. So I think that just from just that concept alone, I think Kotodama is an inoffensive card. But it's not cool. Like, it requires that environment for it to be funny. So memorable and peak. Also, crossout designator. You know, you get to play a bunch of cards. What's that card? Lullaby of Obedience, right? You get to play cards that interact with card names. The true name. Anyway, that's my rant about Kotodama. Ceremonial Bell. Underwhelming. Just a dude with defense that you can look at cards. Boar Soldier's a mistake. 2K card that has a lot of conditions to attack. Karate Man, I'm going to put underwhelming. It's kind of funny. It can make itself 2K, but it blows up. There's something to do with that. It's not good, but there's something you could do with it, I guess. Invader of the Throne. This is a control flip effect, right? It's in the super rares, I'm pretty sure. Select one monster opponent's out of the field and switch control with this card. It can't be activated during the battle phase. This card's weird. I'm going to put it in underwhelming because the condition to make the switch is so specific, right? Like, just to do the swap effect, it has to not be attacked, and I don't like that. You have to, like, set it, wait a turn, or set it in combat with a flip. It's just limited. Minar, I don't even remember what this is, but it's a mistake. Penguin Knight, it's never going to happen. It's kind of funny, but it's never going to happen. Spear Cretin is... I'm going to put Spear Cretin in inoffensive. I know this card can do a bunch of shenanigans that are really interesting. I don't really like it, because I feel like what happens with Spear Cretin is there's either that loop that you can do with two of them, or it just shows off why other cards are more interesting. I don't know if that makes any sense to anyone, but like, when I think of flipping Spear Cretin, I think of getting the card that I actually want to activate, and not it. So, I don't know. It's fine, but it's okay. Dark Zebra is underwhelming. Banisher of the Light, I think, is memorable. I like that this card, you know, changes everything. It's a floodgate that's easily outable, and it's not simple to just summon. You have to set it first, and then have it be attacked. Are you going over the McDonald's cards and tournament packs after Pharaoh Servant? A little bit, yes. I have, and the video game promos. I have that in a separate list, but the problem is, I mean, I'll show you. I mentioned it earlier. For some reason, Tier Maker will not load the tier list for this one. I don't know why. So I can talk about them, and there are only a handful of cards in here that even matter. So I'll mention them separately at the end as like bonus cards, but we'll get there. Okay. So yeah, Banisher of the Light. I do like this card because it is a floodgate that isn't instantaneous. It has to be attacked or safely flip face up. Banishing everything universally is, I think, a very cool thing in Yu-Gi-Oh! It unfortunately is just used for a lot of unfun things in practice a lot of the time. Don't really understand why. It has to be that way. Once upon a time, banishing was kind of cool. Wall Shout is a mistake. This is not very interesting. It's just a very conditional like process to summon a monster that's just a guy. Weather Report is cute. I understand that some people really like Weather Report. It's like funny. I genuinely think it's a mistake. I like it. The idea. I like how the guy looks. I like his vibe. I like he's chilling. He's got his umbrella. He's got his cloud. My problem with Weather Report is it doesn't do anything except pop the swords and get you the extra battle phase. But like, that's cards that name other cards so hyper specifically like that. I just don't think that they're as flexible or interesting to build around. And getting a second battle phase out of it, I guess. So it's cute, but it's kind of whatever to me. Hero Shadow Scout. There's a whole thing you can do with this. That's like giving your opponent extra. There are combos you can do with this, but they're stupid. No. Jigen Bakugan, same thing. I don't care. Mahavilo, I'm going to put an inoffensive. It is a build-around, but the build-around is just, it gets big. It's not really affecting gameplay beyond you preemptively equip it with a bunch of stuff and it gets huge. For that reason, I don't think the strategies and the potential and the ceiling of build-arounds for cubes and stuff like that with it are that big. But it's definitely better than just the big guys in underwhelming and nothing else. You do still want to build around this in some way. Amoeba. I think Amoeba's memorable. I think Amoeba and Griggle by I think Amoeba's more interesting than Griggle, but I'm gonna put them on the same playing field. I'm gonna try and not be too biased towards burn over life point increase. I think these cards are memorable. They're awful, but what makes them funny is that they create a whole gimmick, right? Like having a deck where you're trying to give Amoeba to your opponent and burn them is such an interesting concept. You know what? Let me think. I may be giving them a bit too much credit. I don't know. Because no, I'll put them in inoffensive. So the reason I'm not I want to put them in memorable, but the problem with them is they do have that situation where, like, for example, Kotodama. In order for Kotodama to be good, you have to literally build an environment for it. Amoeba and Griggle don't have that. Amoeba and Griggle, they are a little bit more flexible. Like in that you can just creature swap, but you still need to build a deck that has them in mind, or you're not going to play them at all. They're not something you can kind of easily slot in. And even though tunes are like that, where you have to absolutely build around them, they are so chaotic and game warping that I think that gives them extra points. So, like, kind of the meter here is the worse you are, the more you have to validate it by how crazy you are. And I think these cards are pretty crazy to warrant how bad they are, but not quite up here. But I don't know. They could be memorable or inoffensive. I'll leave it up to the viewer. Flash Assailant, underwhelming. There is something here. It's a 2K guy that gets weaker. So there's a thought process here. It's like an inverse Muka Muka. But I think that's why it's an underwhelming. Kind of like Dark Elf and Muka Muka were. Senju and Sonic Bird. So they're the first, like, Stratos cards in the game. I think these cards are... I think they're inoffensive. So they could be memorable, but the thing is, they're so dependent on the cards you're searching being interesting. They themselves are giving you a +1 in card economy that does not do anything. Rituals, by their build, they're negs in order to well, I'll say -1s at the very minimum to summon, right? And these help even that out, but they don't change the base gameplay of rituals. So I would say they're inoffensive, and they're very dependent on the other cards that sort of pick up the slack for the mechanic that is ritual. Relinquished. Relinquished is memorable. It might be peak. Anyone have any thoughts on this? If it's memorable or peak? I'm not sure. I feel like it's too reliant on other stuff to really be there, but the fact that it's a 1-star ritual kind of fixes the whole problem with it being low. And it has so much going on, right? It's not like tunes where you have to literally build an environment for it. It's a little less restrictive in that way, but it reflects damage. It takes control of monsters. You can flip it down, flip it back face up to do it again. There's a lot of, like, interaction here. So, you know what? I think just because of the nuance of Relinquished, I'm going to put it in peak. I think there's a lot more you can do with it in an environment built for it. That'd be really fun. You can kaiju your opponent, take over their monster, you know? There's a lot of interesting stuff going there. Yeah, I think Relinquished is peak. Hungry Burger, Performance of Sword, Crab Turtle, all mistakes. And ritual spells that don't do anything but summon the ritual monster are also mistakes. These are bad. This was why rituals were not interesting at first. It took Relinquished being a 1-star ritual monster to be significant. Toon World doesn't do anything. It's a mistake. The tunes themselves are what make it interesting. MST's peak, I don't think I need to explain this very much. MST's flexibility and timing and ways you can use it to your advantage are super, super, super interesting. I just think that this card is really cool. I don't know. Everyone's played MST. They know what it does. They know how good it is. Giant Trunade by comparison, I think this card's memorable. There's a lot of cool combos you can do with it, but they're all sort of the same thing where it's like recycling cards. It's not the same game plan as Heavy Storm where you're losing those cards permanently. It's not the same mentality of MST where you have to kind of think about it a little bit. Giant Trunade is a very interesting board wipe that has more, it has a different sort of nuance to it, but I don't think it's more nuanced or interesting than MST or Heavy. I think it's a memorable card. Rush Recklessly is kind of like underwhelming with where is it? Reinforcements. Oh no, I put that in inoffensive. Yeah, it's inoffensive. This is better than Rush Recklessly, obviously, because you can do it during your turn and it's a bigger, more meaningful boost. But it is not so impactful that hold on. I'm gonna think about this. It might be memorable. Let me think. Because there's more flexibility to it. But you're really only using it as a damage check trick. You're not really using it outside of that. I'm gonna put it in inoffensive. It's good for sure, but like it's not as interesting on its face as memorable or the peak cards are. I think Resurrectedly still inoffensive. But way better than reinforcements. No doubt. Reliable Guardian is still a mistake, just like Castle Walls were. Bad. Painful Choice. Oh my god. Man. Is Painful Choice peak? I think the only reason Painful Choice isn't peak to me, it's at least memorable, obviously. I think the reason Painful Choice isn't peak is actually because it just does too much. I think in some cases, it's... If the choice was more meaningful, right? Let's say you were picking 2 cards from your deck. One got milled, one got added to your hand. That's one thing, but you're binning 4 cards. It, like, the choice is almost... like, that's the joke, right? That you, oh, yeah, you're making a choice. Yeah, but what choice are you making? Like, all of it's helping your opponent in a pretty significant way. I don't know. This card is really cool. I'm glad it exists, but I don't think it's a flawlessly designed card, you know? Forceful Sentry, this card is a mistake. This card is one of the most powerful cards ever. You get to look at your opponent's whole hand and shuffle a card back into the deck. There's nothing fun about this card. This card's awful. It's so stupid. Bad. In terms of card design, obviously. Don't get that twisted. It's a very powerful card. Confiscation is... I'm going to give Confiscation inoffensive card design. It's okay. You get to look at your opponent's hand, pay 1,000, and discard. The discard isn't necessarily going to be as good. I think that it just really depends on the environment. I think this is like a lot of cards where the environment's going to dictate how healthy this actually is or is not. But I think this is inoffensive at highest. It's not, I don't like it, but I think that there are times where it can be okay. Duo is kind of a similar case, but I actually think this card is underwhelming card design. I think that it goes like this, right? Forceful Sentry is too thoughtless and broken because you get to look and shuffle back. Duo, you are discarding at random and then they're choosing something. Confiscation is only 1 card. In these cards' cases, I just don't like that you're doing a +1 on Duo. And if it happens turn 1, it's so unfun. I just don't like it. So yeah, I that's kind of where I land with these. I think that the discard trio is like this. Confiscation is probably the most fair of all of them, but even then I'm not a really big fan of them. Upstart's inoffensive. I think some people think this is peak card design or memorable. I think this is fine. Having a 37 card deck instead of a 40 card is fine. The fact that you get to use it with like spell counter combos down the line, it's fine. It just doesn't really do anything. There are combos you can do with it off of the fact that it increases your opponent's life points, but it's whatever. I don't know. Darkness Approaches, it's funny, but it's a mistake. Final Destiny, funny, but a mistake. Curse of Fiend, convoluted, a mistake. Magical Labyrinth, summons a stupid monster, a mistake. Messenger of Peace, I think, is memorable. I like this card. I think it's a very cool stall card. The fact that you it doesn't block monsters off of anything except attack points. So its existence encourages people to play monsters that are 1400 or less. It doesn't, flat out block everything, and it has no sort of protection. It doesn't really do anything unfair. It just sits on the field and encourages you to play removal cards. I like Messenger of Peace quite a bit. I think this card's cool. But it's not so cool that it like warps the way you play the game and stuff like that. Toll is underwhelming. I think that these sorts of cards that create these sort of like costs, they're interesting dynamics, but they're not good. I don't love them. Chain Energy is the same way. I'm not going to call it a mistake. I think it's a very frustrating card, but it does at least create an interesting gameplay scenario. But I still think they're underwhelming. Gravekeeper's Servant, kind of the same way. The very slow residual cards they're fine, but they're not that crazy. Eternal Rest. Now, this is one people may not expect. I think Eternal Rest is a memorable card. So, for those of you who don't remember what Eternal Rest does, let's look at this really quick. Destroy all monsters equipped with equip cards. So let's think about this. Eternal Rest is a dark hole, a very specific dark hole. What this means in practice is if you are designing a space where equipping cards is a really big deal. Let's say you're the only revival cards in your cube are Overdone Burial, Premature Burial, Autonomous Action Unit, and Living Fossil, right? All equip revival cards. Eternal Rest says any card that has been recurred from the graveyard is destroyed. You can kind of create this. Let's say you're playing equip cards as your main mode of doing things in that format. Eternal Rest is a specifically cool way to only destroy the invested monsters. It doesn't destroy everything. From a card design perspective, I think this card is super cool. It just, equip cards were not ever integral enough to see this card have play, but I think it is such a cool build around. I love Eternal Rest. You also have the moduleness to equip an opponent's monster with an equip spell and destroy their monster with Eternal Rest. So yeah, I think it's super cool. Really like this card. Tailor of the Fickle is also really interesting. I'm going to say it's inoffensive. It's a really cool battle trick to where you can move an equip spell off your opponent's monster to your own, or attack with your own monster, Tailor the Fickle it to another monster, and attack with that one and do more damage. There's definitely thought process here. I just think the ceiling of it's a little low. But years ago, I would have thought this was a mistake. I didn't realize this card actually had cool application. But yeah, Eternal Rest is much more interesting than Tailor the Fickle. Megamorph, peak. Megamorph is peak card design. I love that this card has this whole thing. You have to pay attention to life point count, which you can manipulate to your whim to make Megamorph double or have a monster's attack. You can equip it to your opponent's monster to have their attack. You can equip it to your own to double yours. You can do that vice versa if for some reason you're in that situation. This card is deceptively interesting. Snatch Steal, I'm going to call memorable. I like this a lot more than Change of Heart in that it's an equip spell. You have to equip it to your opponent to take it. It can be destroyed. It increases their life points by 1,000 every turn. There's a lot of thoughtfulness to this card. But sometimes it does feel swingy because of the nature of take control cards. And for that reason, I have a little bit of an issue with it. But if you wanted to put Snatch Steal in peak, you could. I think it's a memorable card. Malevolent Nuzzler, underwhelming. It's just a booster. It doesn't really do anything else. Acts of Despair, same thing. It raises the ceiling of your boosting cards, but it still doesn't really do anything except that. Horn of Light, mistake. It increases defense. It's not good. Horn of the Unicorn, same deal. Black Pendant. It has that extra burn damage, so there's a little more of an element to it, but I still think it's underwhelming. Chorus of Sanctuary, who cares? I mean, I'll put it in underwhelming because it is technically a blanket thing you can put on all your monsters, but it is whatever, it's fine. Gaia Power, so all of these field spells that actually boost attribute stuff beyond the numbers the originals did, these will go in underwhelming. They are more meaningful boosts than the originals, but they also and they do create sort of build arounds. I won't take that away from it. It's sort of a tribal thing, but just being a boost is kind of whatever. I don't think it's that interesting. Spellbinding Circle. I think that this is interesting. I think this card is inoffensive. I think that Spellbinding Circle, stopping an attack and freezing that monster in place, is sort of an interesting style of play, to where you could put it in Memorable and I wouldn't even fault you for it. You could also put it in Underwhelming. I could see that. But I do like this style of disrupting opponents. I think that there's room for that. Like, if you make the quality of trap card, not exceed Spellbinding Circle by that much, it still has a very big use. Epigon's awful. Snake Fang is awful. House of Adhesive Tape. These are awful, awful trap cards. And lastly, where is Fairy's Hand Mirror? When your opponent activates a spell card that targets exactly one monster, target another card that would be appropriate target. That spell now targets that new target. This card is bad Tailor of the Fickle. Because Tailor of the Fickle exists, there's not a reason to use this card. And not even in a cute, oh, well, what if you power down from Tailor of the Fickle? Tailor of the Fickle already needs this hyper-specific build-around situation. So, that is my tiering for Spell Ruler, Magic Ruler, whatever you want to call it. All right, we're going to go SRL card design. We got one more and we'll be done. Okay, on to the last one, Pharaoh Servant. And look at that, not as many normal monsters. It was a very trap-focused set. So we're going to go, I don't know, for Wing Weaver, we'll do just Underwhelming. Beast of Tawar, Underwhelming. Mr. Volcano, Mistake. All this stuff is a mistake at this point. Those have the stats to warrant them a little bit. Sky Scout, Gurton, Darkfire Soldiers. They can go Underwhelming. Everything else in Mistake. Island Turtles got 2k defense. We hit those thresholds there. Boom. Buster Blader, interesting card. You can build so Buster Blader, you can build an environment where there are dragons focused in the fighting. In that case, in the inoffensive. The effect actually is an interesting build around for a cube or something like that. So it's not just a big statted dummy, it's a module big statted dummy. Sword Hunter equips monsters it destroys. That's kind of interesting. I'll put that in inoffensive. I'm going to put Jinzo in Memorable or Peak. I don't know. I think Memorable. I think Jinzo's Memorable. It is a big deal in the way that it functions. Like, there's that element of you summon it, trap cards don't work anymore. It has an interaction with Call of the Haunted. But it's not that nuanced. It's a really cool card. It's a really cool card. But it doesn't open up deck building in this crazy way, or card interactions in this crazy way. The Fiend Mega Cyber, I think, is memorable. The fact that it has a conditional special summon, its stats are pretty good. I think that makes it a pretty interesting card. Invitation to a Dark Sleep, who cares? Mistake. Legendary Fisherman, I'm going to say underwhelming, even though it does have an interesting element of, like, with Legendary Ocean and being unaffected by spell cards, but that doesn't really lead to much of anything, and it also creates anti-synergy with your own cards. It's a very weirdly designed card. Deep Sea Warrior, same thing, underwhelming. It's a 1 tribute that you need Umi for, and it doesn't really do anything. Hayabusa Knight, underwhelming. It attacks twice, but its attack points aren't interesting enough to really matter. Parasite, I'm going to say inoffensive. The whole, like, flipping it into the opponent's deck is a very, very unique effect in the game. but you really have to build an environment for it. It's not so easy to do something with it. Parasite should not be a flip. How would you design it? I'm curious. Parasite is very interesting, but yeah, I don't know. Um, Gearfried the Iron Knight is, I'm gonna say, underwhelming. There are combos you can do with Gearfried, but there's only a handful. It's the Smoke Grenade, it's Blast with Chain, it's Butterfly Dagger Elma, and that's like a couple cards. And that's not something you can really build a ton of stuff around. Being unaffected by Snatch Steal and stuff is kind of cute. You can't revive it with Burial or anything. I think you should just normal summon it, then it infects your opponent's deck. I think the Retrain should probably have done that, right? I don't even know what the Retrain does. We'll get there eventually. Kisatai, underwhelming. It's like, I get it. Kisatai, like, it grabs on the opponent's monster, steadily increases your life points. It's not that crazy. Bite Shoes, Mistake, Vampire Baby, I don't care. I know it like takes over an opponent's monster, but like, I don't know, I'll put it underwhelming, I guess. Bombardment Beetle, dumb. Bubonic Vermin. Bubonic Vermin is, I guess, inoffensive. It's like flip summon more of them. I think it's a less interesting version of Nimble Momonga and Giant Germ. But I don't know. I don't really care about it. Worse than Maneater Bug? Yeah. Yeah. Goblin Attack Force, I will go ahead and put as underwhelming. I understand that there's a dynamic of, ooh, you attack, do you not? You go to defense mode. I think it's more like Dark Elves attacking, where you don't attack when you hit a certain life point amount. But after that point, it's just like, I don't know, it's in defense, you got to protect it a bit, and it goes back to attack. It's just kind of a guy. I don't know, it's not that interesting. At least with Jirai Gumo, there's that whole, ooh, what's going to happen with the coin flip thing? You're kind of on your toes, you don't know what's going to happen. You get what's happening with this card. It's kind of a big doofus. Morphing Jar number 2. Okay, I'm gonna be real. Morphing Jar number 2 is a mistake. This card should not have been printed. Morphing Jar number 2 creates so many infinite loops and constantly shuffling back into the deck with itself. At 1, I guess it's fine, but I think number 1 and Cyber Jar are way more chaotic and interesting cards. This is a degenerate card. I don't like Morphing Jar number 2. Mad Sword Beast, it has Trample. Who cares? It's not that interesting. Trample is an interesting effect, but like, that's not enough to make you not just a guy attacking. 4-star Ladybug of Doom, it's inoffensive. The fact that it destroys very specific levels of monsters is like this particular kind of removal. I think it's okay. I just think that there's more removal cards that are more interesting than it. Drillbug to get the parasite guy. I'm gonna put an underwhelming. It's something. It's like a synergy with the parasite, but again, it's like, this is the card that's the more interesting card. So I don't know. We'll put it there. Thousand Eyes Restrict. This is peak Yu-Gi-Oh. Just like Relinquished. The attacks floodgate effect, the sucking things up, all that sort of stuff. There's a lot of nuance to this card that I really like. I think that's just before you even consider the fact that you can instant fusion it out or you can metamorphosis it out. I think the card's really cool. On its face, on its own. Cross out, peak Yu-Gi-Oh! This creates a really cool dynamic with face-down monsters. It banishing copies from both players' deck creates a thought process to it. Having effects that flip your opponent's monsters face down so you can cross out them is really cool. Think Book of Moon, think Tsukuyomi. No Man is a really, really well-designed card. Really like it. Prohibition. It's interesting. I actually think this card is kind of... I'm going to put inoffensive. I would put underwhelming, but it really depends. It depends on how you design this around this card. The fact that it says something very specific is interesting. I've been in the group chat watching Yu-Gi-Oh! Season 1. We just passed Pegasus Duel at the end of Duel's Kingdom. Nice! Nice! That was good timing for me to get to Thousand Eyes Restrict. Nobleman of Extermination. It's inoffensive. The problem with this card is it's not as reliable for removal. People can kind of easily just play around it a little bit. It is cool that it removes trap cards from the deck, but it's just not as reliable. There are way better backer removal cards. Dimension Hole, I'm going to put underwhelming. It doesn't really do anything, but it's a really unique effect of just banishing your own guy. Limiter removal, we're going to put this in... I'm going to put limiter removal in inoffensive. The problem with limiter removal I have is it just kind of ends games. It's super high octane, but it's like, it just makes everyone big. I don't think that's that interesting. I think it's fine. It's okay. Shallow Grave. Shallow Grave is also inoffensive. There's a memorableness to it in that it's a card that sets monsters from the graveyard face down, but it also summons an opponent's monster, and a lot of the time you just don't want to do that. There's not a lot of instances. Like, let's say we were to create an environment where you want to set face down monsters. Well, that means your opponent's likely also going to have face down monsters they want to set. So it's unintuitive to want to even play this card, unless you're doing something really degenerate, like with Morphing Jar number 2, which I don't think is good card design. So, yeah. Cold Wave. Underwhelming. This card just... I don't want to say it's a mistake. I think this card has uses that are interesting, but anything that says no interaction, I'm not really a fan of. And this card does just basically say you can't do anything. So I'm not a huge fan of that. Insect Barrier, again, underwhelming. I understand the whole, like in the same way Dragon Capture Jar was underwhelming. Hold on. Let me not freaking rub my nose and then talk in the middle of it. In the same way that Dragon Capture Jar was underwhelming, I think Insect Barrier is underwhelming. It's hyper-specific. Yeah, DNA Surgery, that combo exists. It's cute, but it's like, I don't know. The card just saying insects cannot attack. There's a thought process here. It exists, but I don't know if it's as intricate and I don't know. I'm using buzzwords, intricate, nuance, but I really do feel like it's just not on that same level for this. So that's just kind of how I feel about Insect Barrier. Burning Land. This card's okay. I think that Burning Land, while it is a continuous burn effect over the course of several turns that affects a field spell destruction, I don't think it's that much more interesting than Tremendous Fire. It's just burn over the course of several turns other than a conditional burn effect. I think it's kind of underwhelming. Inspection. There is a very, very specific combo you can do with this card. It is so hyper specific, I'm just putting it in mistake. You're barely ever using this card. Ground Collapse is inoffensive. The whole idea of messing with opponents' monster zones can be cute in a build around. I think randomly encountering it in it's either really bad or really broken, but as a build around, it's an interesting concept. It was the first card to kind of do that. Premature Burial, this card is... I'm going to call it peak. I'm going to say Premature Burial is peak Yu-Gi-Oh! There's nuance to how you play it. You revive a card, but it's an equip spell, so it can be prevented with interruption. You pay life points for it, which synergizes with other cards. You can Giant Trinate it back to your hand, and there's sorts of loops you can do with it. I think there's a lot of thought into Premature Burial compared to other revival cards. 7 Completed is just a specific equip spell, underwhelming. Monster Recovery, there's not really much you can do with this card. I think on its face, it sounds more interesting than it actually is, but it just doesn't really do anything of note. You reshuffle your whole field back into your hand, shuffle back to your deck, draw. I don't know. Reign of Mercy, underwhelming. Insect Imitation is inoffensive. We end up getting, Transmodify way later. Transmodify is just a more generic version of this card. You have to have really specific levels in mind to build around it. It's an interesting effect, but I think something like Small World is so much more interesting than this card. But I don't know. Maybe I think it's the inflexibility of it, the type fixation of it that kind of keeps it limited for me. Like, that's what I mean, I guess, like, when I was talking about Kotodama earlier. Like, this is more of a Kotodama situation, where you have to build with particular insects with specific levels for it to be good. Fairy Meteor Crush, underwhelming, who cares? It's just trample. Enchanted Javelin, underwhelming, you just gain life off the attack. Driving Snow, mistake, it's such hyper-specific stuff. Like, there's a lot of hyper-specific stuff on the trap cards. Like, I'm just gonna, like, move a bunch of them there. Hold on, let's just, so people have a sense of this, so we're reminded of the hyper-specific trap cards in this set. We're gonna read them. It's especially the common ones that are like this. Gust, yeah, Gust is another one like this. Driving Snow. You can only activate this card when one or more of your trap cards are destroyed and sent to the field or the graveyard by a card effect your opponent controls. Destroy one spell trap in the field. Okay, what if they target this card? What's it going to do? Like, I just, this is a specificity that does not create more enjoyment. We have Gust. When one of your spell cards is destroyed, it's the same thing. Mystic Probe. Can only activate this card when a continuous spell is activated. Negate continuous spells during the turn. So it's a single turn negate on continuous spells specifically? What? Solomon's Law Book. Skip your next standby phase. Why? World Suppression. You only activate this card when a field spell is activated. Negate field spells during this turn. What are we doing? Armored Glass. You can only activate this card when an equip card. Negate effects of equip spells in the field till the end of this turn. Just play Toto the Fickle. Steal it. Like, none of these cards are interesting. Major Riot. When one of your monsters is returned from the field to your hand by your opponent's card effect, return all monsters on the field to their respective hands. Both you and opponent special summon hand face down. I get what this card's trying to do. Major Riot is cute, I guess. But you have to rely on your opponent doing it. It's just so specific. So yeah, these cards are they're not that interesting. Lawbook sounds like a card an anime hero would make use as a one-off. Yeah, exactly, to get around a specific thing. I'm pretty sure I've seen this card used in the anime like once. But yeah, these cards are awful. Very bad. Yeah. Type 0 Magic Crusher, discard a spell, inflict 500. No, bad. Respect play. Both players see the other's hand. Who cares? I don't care about that. What is Metal Detector? I missed that one. Continuous Trap. Negate all continuous traps. Yeah, that's also not happening. Yo, what's up, Big? Thanks for the raid. We are almost done ranking all of 2002. We're getting there. We're getting there. We're at the trap cards of the last set. I'll briefly talk about the promos, and then we'll be done. But this will be a thing that we're doing weekly. Oh yeah, dude. Oh yeah. No, look. We've already done. We did LOB, right? Starter decks. Metal Raiders. Spell Ruler. And now we're on to the last one. I also had to make all these tier lists and upload them to Tier Maker. That took a while. But I'm almost done with 2003, so next week I'll be coasting a little bit more. But anyway, back to what we're doing right now. So, on to the traps that aren't completely bad. So, there are actually use cases for a lot of these specific ones. Gamble at least has an interesting draw effect. We'll put that in underwhelming. Regulation of Tribe is a weird attack negation effect that requires consistent tributes. Like, that card's not terrible. It has some imaginable use. I think Eye of Truth lets you gain life points over a course of time, but if they have a spell that you don't, or no, if they have a spell you do, I think is what it is. So we're going to do that. Eye of Truth there. Minor Goblin Official is actually really interesting. When your opponent goes to under 3,000 life points, they start taking 500 until the end of the duel, basically. I'm surprised that a card who could let you draw 5 cards could be that bad. Yeah, but it's just a coin flip, and it's not reliable enough. But I think Gamble at least is interesting. Like, I could imagine building a cube that has Gamble in it, and it'd be kind of funny. Minor Goblin Official goes there. Earthshaker is a very specific removal card that is dependent on attributes. And for that, I will put it in offensive. That is a build around you could do in a cube of some kind. That is interesting, but it's not good enough to be any higher than that. Infinite Dismissal. It permanently, at the end phase, gets rid of level 3 or lower monsters. Imagine a cube where you're building around that, and you just build up with a bunch of monsters that have to be that level. I think that card is actually pretty interesting. In fact, I would actually go as far as to say, as from a gameplay mechanic, I put it in memorable. Every end phase, wipe the board. There's a lot of interesting concepts with that. Magical Hats, very memorable. This card, setting spells and traps and treating them as monsters from the deck, like a roundabout mill, very cool effect. I really like Magical Hats. I would actually say it probably is peak Yu-Gi-Oh card design for that reason. It's just such a weird card. I'm open to push back on that, but things are kind of slowing down at this point, and I'm almost done. So, Chain Destruction I think is fine. You're destroying monsters from the deck. I think it's kind of underwhelming because it doesn't really have a massive effect on gameplay. You could probably build around this, but I don't really know in what way it would be that interesting. Light Force Sword is inoffensive. It's like temporary hand disruption. The fact that it comes back, the fact that it's a trap card, I think I like those a lot more than the other broken hand destruction cards that we've removed before. Go Gravity Bind. Gravity Bind, I think, is memorable. It creates a whole gameplay mode around it where, you know, monsters level 3 or lower are the whole thing, but Infinite Dismissal goes the other way. It gets rid of level 3 lower monsters. Gravity Bind, unfortunately, is hurt nowadays by the existence of Xyz and Link monsters, but it still has a place. You can build an environment for Gravity Bind. And you could even make a cube where the point is, like, the Xyz monsters and the Link monsters are the way you get out of the Gravity Bind. But then you play a bunch of Xyz and Link hate, you know? You got to think a little bit outside the box. Don't just go like, well, Xyz and Link monsters exist now, so it's not a good card. We'll talk about Imperial Order. This card... Alright, this is going to sound really weird because of how notorious Imperial Order is. I think this card is inoffensive, which is actually the opposite of how I'd actually describe it, but based on my tiering wording, I'm going to say it's inoffensive. Imperial Order is one of the most broken cards ever printed, but you have to think about like an environment where you could build it where it's okay. It does exist. If you de-emphasize spell cards in your limited environment, Imperial Order can be a fair card, right? In the eroded version, you have to keep paying the life points. In the uneroded version, you have a tactical decision of, do I destroy it at the start of my turn or not? I like the thought process there. It's just the fact that spell cards have always been the most powerful thing in Yu-Gi-Oh! That Imperial Order has always been unfair. So there is a world where this card exists that it is fair. I hope that's understandable. If I was wording it based on, you know, the way it's happened historically, this card is in mistake. This card should not have been printed. If I'm doing it by how interesting the card can be, it's peak. But there are just too many cases where you have to build around it to make sure Imperial Order isn't ruining your game. So that's that. Gift of Mystical Elf. I like this in the way that I like Just Desserts. I think it's inoffensive. Just Desserts at least is getting you to a win con. Gift of Mystical Elf is less life point gain, but it's conditional life point gain that I do enjoy. I think it's inoffensive. There's thought that goes into it. Numinous Healer. It's also similarly like thoughtful life point gain, but it's still, I don't know. It's just kind of, you activate Numinous Healers, and if you've activated more in the duel, you gain more life. It's not as thoughtful as Gift of the Mystical Elf, in my opinion. Shadow of Eyes, inoffensive. It's a trap version of Stop Defense. We talked about that earlier. I think that has use cases that you can use against other people. It's kind of interesting. Dust Tornado. Dust Tornado is peak. In the same way that MST is. It trades being able to be activated immediately to letting you set a spell or trap I think it actually has to be a trap, from your hand to use next turn. So you can use one of the trap cards in your hand you chose not to set on your next turn without having to set it face down first. You can keep a card in your hand to protect it. There's some thought here. It's not as good as MST, but I do think that the flexibility of Dust Tornado is very, very important in Yu-Gi-Oh! Ceasefire. Ceasefire is a memorable card. The fact that it does so much burn damage and the fact that it flips over effect monsters and stops them from activating is super, super cool. It's not peak because it ends games too easily. The amount of damage it does is too much, and I don't think that that's peak card design. I think it should have been a little bit weaker. Like, I think if Ceasefire did 400 damage instead of 500, it would be better. It's cool that it doesn't damage based on normal monsters. That's something, but in the most interesting designed spaces, they're going to be mostly effect monsters. So, yeah. So that's Ceasefire. Time Seal. I don't think this card is interesting at all. I think this card was a mistake. I like, who cares? You spend a card to stop them from drawing. It's the least. You don't even see the impact of what this really did. It's the least interesting 1-for-1 ever. Grave Robber is memorable. The fact that you get to steal a card from your opponent's graveyard is really cool. You don't really have control over what it can be, so it's not a very skillful card, but I think it's really cool. Backup Soldier, it's fine. Backup Soldier, I think, is inoffensive. It's recursion for normal monsters, but as a result, the normal monsters are making what you're bringing back with this card less interesting a lot of the time. Call the Haunted. Also peak, alongside Premature Burial. A lot of nuance to how the card works. If you know what you're doing, you can have all sorts of weird interactions with monsters. You can destroy your own monster if it gets popped. You can recycle Call the Haunted to use it again later. A lot of really cool stuff. Yeah, you can use a Backup Soldier with Exodia, exactly. Yeah, there are uses for Backup Soldier that have some interest. So I don't want to put it in underwhelming just because it's normal monsters. I think that it's cool. But there's also probably cards you could be using to bring back monsters that aren't so specific to normal monsters. So, yeah, I think inoffensive makes sense for it. Shift, who cares? You're changing an attack target. I just think there are more interesting cards to do this with. There's something called Staunch Defender we'll talk about later, I think is actually more interesting than this card. Forced Requisition. This is, okay, Appropriate is a really interesting card. I think Appropriate is a memorable card. The fact that every time your opponent draws, you draw 2. If you create an environment for this, draw cards are going to be crazy. Forced Requisition is similar, where, hold on, let me double check what this card does, just to make sure I'm not getting this wrong. Where is it? There he is. You can activate this card when you discard a card from your hand. After that, each time you discard a card from your hand, your opponent must also discard the same number of cards from his or her hand. So this card's interesting. I don't think it's as interesting as Appropriate, which every time they draw, you draw. But it has some intrigue to it. I think I'd put it a tier below. I just think discarding cards is inherently less interesting than discarding. I'm sorry. Yeah, discarding is inherently less interesting than drawing in a lot of cases, because it's like taking away gameplay instead of like offering it. Magic Drain, very, very interesting card. In fact, I would actually say Magic Drain is peak Yu-Gi-Oh! I think it is cooler than Seven Tools, Horn of the Heaven, and Magic Jammer because of the mind game it offers. Your opponent can choose to discard another magic card, meaning your timing of activating Magic Drain is really interesting and unique. So, yeah. I think that level of thought process is different. That makes it stand out. Michizuri. I think this card is... I think it's memorable. It's removal that necessitates your opponent removing your monster first. Unlike Driving Snow and Gust, Michizuri actually makes sense because your opponent's going to be attacking you. If your opponent's blowing up your back row, the chance of you activating Gust or Driving Snow is lower, plus you already have Dust Tornado and MST. They're just really counterintuitive cards, but Michizuri's not. Skull Invitation is inoffensive burn card. It actually has some thought process behind it. I just think that it's kind of boring. Like, every time a card is sent to the graveyard, the owner takes 300. That's such a minimal amount to where it's not that scary. But it's worth, you know, mentioning, I guess. It's not the worst thing in the world. DNA surgery, I'm gonna put as inoffensive. It creates a lot of interesting situations, but a lot of them are just not actually worth the payoff. There are more interesting things to do that aren't type swapping. Interestingly enough, I don't know. Light of Intervention. Light of Intervention. I'm gonna put this as underwhelming. There is a use for it. It exists where like you can stop set monsters from being set and you flip them up automatically. There's something there, but it just doesn't. There's not enough cases for it. DNA surgery synergizer with Dragon Capture Jar. Put it in mistake. No, because DNA surgery can do a lot more. Like you can change everything to machine and then use it with Cyber Dragon to contact fuse, right? There are instances where DNA surgery is weird. I could imagine creating something like DNA surgery or that card that Zane uses that changes everything in the graveyards to like, I think Dragon or something. Like there are cards that like can change type and then using cards that care about type that aren't Dragon Capture Jar. Or maybe Dragon Capture Jar. I don't know. Maybe it's one of many. But I think DNA surgery is more like a blanket thing. It's not so specific compared to like Insect Barrier. Mirror Wall is really cool. I like Mirror Wall. I'm going to put it memorable. I like that it cuts attack and there's a life point cost to keep it up on the field. And it's sort of a mind game. Do I pay the life? Do I not? You could also play like a cube where like you're constantly gaining life points to pay for the Mirror Wall. And yeah, I don't know. There's definitely something there that makes Mirror Wall an interesting battle phase card. And then lastly, okay, we got Solemn Wishes. Solemn Wishes is actually, I'm going to call it, I'm going to actually say Solemn Wishes is memorable. And that might seem pretty weird because Solemn Wishes seems like a very unassuming card. Like it's just 500 every time you draw, but it's not locked to the draw phase. So you can play more draw cards and keep gaining life points, and cards that trigger off of life point gain can keep happening. It's one of the most like module life point gain cards that exists in the game. And I think that's really, really interesting. So, I think that there's something to that card. You could argue it's inoffensive, but yeah. All right, and lastly, attack and receive. Admittedly, I saved this because I couldn't remember what it did. Where is it? Where is it? Did I miss it? Oh, there we go. You can only activate when you take damage. You flick 700 points. Oh, it's like really, really conditional burn. Yeah, that's a mistake. That card's really bad. Okay. I like this list. I think it makes sense for the most part. I think I think we start to see here, like if you compare it to the other tier list, right? The inoffensive tier is so small in most of these lists, except for like here because all the attribute recruiters are inoffensive, so they're like an archetype of card that all fit in there. But like inoffensive was pretty small. Then you get to Pharaoh's Servant, and you have all of these like hyper specific gimmicky use case cards, or cards that are pretty usable in some ways, but not all the time. So this is where we start to see the rise of more gimmicky cards in Yu-Gi-Oh! And I really like that. I think that like even a lot of the memorable cards are gimmicks. They're just more reliable gimmicks, you know? So, yep. I'm going to put that as saved. We're going to go PSV, card design. Hold up. I keep doing that. I need to copy it first and then save it that way. Boom. All right, and now we are going to save it. All right, and lastly, we can't tier this, but we're just going to mention them really quickly. So I'll have this noted for the future so people are aware of how I feel about this. So I don't care about any of these normal monsters. Mechanical Chaser goes in underwhelming. Everyone knows that. Axe Raider, Giant Red Sea Snake, all these monsters that hit the threshold for stats, you get it. Based on all the other tiering that we've done so far, that's where they go. these gimmicky metal morph monsters, whatever, they're either mistake. I don't care enough about them to even rate them, really. I would if this tier list was working, but it's not right now, so oh well. The cards I want to mention from these packs that are worth it are Morphing Jar is a peak Yu-Gi-Oh card. Morphing Jar is peak. It doing the whole redraw your hand, discard your hand. I put Cyber Jar in peak. I put Card Destruction in peak. Morphing Jar, the same reason it goes in peak. Metal Morph is a memorable card. I like that it is a module attacking card where you increase your attack. It can run over any monster it fights. It's a very unique way of boosting your stats. Acid Trap Hole, I think, goes into probably memorable. It's better than Stop Defense or Shadow of Eyes because it actually destroys a monster that is set face down. I think it's a really unique form of removal that you get to see in environments where people are actually setting. And Exchange is also a pretty unique card. I'd put it in inoffensive. I don't know. Actually, Exchange probably goes into memorable just because of how funny it is. It's just the problem is Exchange is not useful a lot of the time, and I think that's why it ends up kind of getting knocked down. So you guys can kind of decide where you feel this card goes, but generally I think that this is a card where I don't know. I think it's one of the most interesting cards ever printed, but it's not useful a lot of the time. It's good for like scoping out hand traps. So I remember a duel where I baited someone into setting all their cards because I searched Morphing Jar, but I actually set Magician of Faith instead, so they attacked into it and I grabbed Heavy Storm. That's how you do it. That's awesome. That's really cool. So yeah, I think that's everything. A bunch of normal monsters that no one cares about, a bunch of equip spells and stuff that don't really matter. Dark Piercing Light is just uninteresting Swords of Revealing Light. There's the fusion sub cards, but frankly I don't care about any of the fusion sub cards because we get King of the Swamp later and all the fusion sub cards after that are way more interesting. So yep. So that was about 3 hours of me yapping nonstop, but we did it. We are now through all of 2002, and I think that I will kind of in post take everything I did here and sort of comment on the best design cards of 2002, and we'll go from there. In fact, you know what I might do? I might just keep this as a VOD and then make a video talking about the best design cards of 2002 instead of rating literally every card in the video. I'll have to think on that. But yeah. All right. Well, cool. It was fun doing something Yu-Gi-Oh again. Tomorrow I will be back with the Ultima run with my bud OG, and then Friday we'll do some Departure Radio again, and yeah, we'll go from there. So thank you everyone for tuning in. I'm gonna go eat something. I'm hungry and I'm thirsty, and yeah. All right. Peace out, people. Hope you had fun, and I'll see you next week. We'll do 2003 next Wednesday. Boop.